Hello, welcome to the Unofficial Controller Podcast Dave Perry interview. This is just a slight small warning from me to suggest that after 99 episodes, this one has got some very light swearing in it. So if that offends you, please turn off now. It's not a normal modus operandi, but Dave Perry is not the sort of guy you can put in a box. It's such a fascinating interview that we just let it run, and it's not something we've been able to pull out in the edit. So sit down, enjoy. There's 3 swear words total. If you can avoid those, then you're all good. Thank you for listening as always. Don't forget to like, subscribe wherever found this show, and on with today's entertainment. Take care, guys. Hello and welcome to the Unofficial Controller Podcast, your weekly gaming podcast, episode 99. Dave Perry. With me, George, and this week joined by, yes, Tom, but more on that in a moment, because most importantly, we've been joined by the man who every gamer in the 90s wished they looked like, every gamer in the 90s wished they sounded like, and every gamer in the 90s wished they played video games half as well as one of the founders of Gamesmaster, founder of many amazing 90s video game magazines when video game magazine editors were akin to deities. He's made numerous other TV gaming appearances. He even has spent time with female pop stars of the 90s. It doesn't really get any better. An acclaimed tattooist, the games animal himself, the mighty Dave Perry. How's it going, sir?
Absolutely wonderful, mate. Thank you for inviting me on your show. I thought I was being set up there. It wasn't sounding like me for a moment.
Oh, no, trust me. All those accolades are yours and more. That's all I could really...
Sounded like the me I always thought I was, but probably deeply knew I wasn't.
Let me tell you, you are that man.
Thank you.
So let's give the initiated and the uninitiated a rundown of how the show's going to go. So coming up, we've got some news. Then we've got the feature, which is a talk with the amazing man himself, Dave. And then the mighty Stingray tears down Fifth from Main. And then the show ends when I ask everyone what they're hoping to play. But the show literally cannot begin until I ask, and it's only right and proper, Dave, what have you been playing?
What have I been playing? Well, last night until late, I was playing Mortal Kombat 2. Went back to that again. I don't know. I got a bit retro. Figured I hadn't played it for a long time, and I started reading some things online. And everything I read online, going back to Mortal Kombat 2 and the subsequent games in the franchise, was pointing towards the fact that Melina was the best character in the game. And being a misogynistic, male chauvinist man of the 80s and 90s, of course I never choose a female character in a video game, not even Chun-Li. I won't go there. I mean, especially not since Kylie Minogue let me down so badly as Cammy in the Street Fighter movie. Yes. So I always pick the male characters. So that pricked my personal pride a little bit. So I had to go back last night and play Mortal Kombat again, just so I could play as Melina, just to find out if she actually was the best character in the game. So that was my last night's gaming.
What did that prove the theorem correct, Dave? Did it, or was she not the best character in the game?
Not really. Didn't make a lot of difference, to be honest with you. But I learned a load of moves, and I remembered what it was like to be, a frustrated younger man trying to pull off fatalities with a character I'd never played with before. Lots of that wandering backwards and forwards whilst the other character falls over while you're trying to pull off
fatalities are awesome when you can execute them, but when you're just sort of bobbing up and down and moving left and right and randomly punching and nothing happening, it's not that slick, is it?
That's it. I was playing it on the 360 as well, Xbox 360, which of course wasn't the machine that we used to play it on. We used to play it on Mega Drive or SNES, or ideally on an arcade machine. So once again, everything's different. And so, do I use the D-pad or do I use the analog stick? And it just, it was a different experience. And I'm not sure whether I should have gone there or not, really. Some things are best left in the past.
I find myself delving into the retro catalogue and pulling out a game I might remember fondly. Now, sometimes it's okay, but more often than not, it's a never meet your hero sort of thing. You realise how clunky the game was and how it looked really poor. And yeah, it's a bit of a shame. I still do it to myself. For the most part, I'm left feeling quite happy, but sometimes that creeping disappointment is one you just can't wipe from yourself.
I think the retro gaming sometimes is very akin to when Friends Reunited emerged at the end of the 90s. And a lot of us sought out our school sweethearts, etc. And they weren't quite what we remembered. Maybe we were better off leaving them back there. You get back in touch with people and you remember them as being the school hotties. And, in your head, these girls were centerfolds. And actually, time hasn't been so kind. And it's the same for some games.
I think you're right. Is there anything else that's tickled your fancy gaming wise? Is that your medium of choice, a 360, or is
No, not always. I played 360 just because that's what I got wired up, and it was getting on. I couldn't be bothered to wire anything else up, and I had a copy of a Mortal Kombat compilation thing, so I went with that one. It was easy, but up until just recently, I've been playing Valhalla, Assassin's Creed on the PS4. That's very, very good. I've enjoyed that. And I got into that because I just finished The Witcher on the last lockdown, the first lockdown we had.
Yeah.
I bought myself a copy of The Witcher 3 because everyone was telling me how what a great game it was. So I thought I'll go there, I'll visit that. So I played that and got absolutely addicted. Of course, I had the time to get addicted. Yeah. So I played Witcher 3 all the way through and loved that game. And I did the typical thing that you do, and that is when you've loved the game, you go back and carry on playing it. I thought I'll play it again. I'll do it a bit differently this time. I'll do more of the quests. I'll go this way. I'll go left instead of right. And of course, in The Witcher 3, you can go back in with your character and retain all the things you found the first time out. But it wasn't as good. So it was empty feeling. And then people were telling me about Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and it sounded very similar. So like a pair of shoes that don't quite fit when you first wear them, it wasn't perfect, but eventually I got into it, and that's been my game now. I've just finished that now, and short of going back and finding every absolute piece of gear and everything, which turns into a ball ache. And you do it, but you kind of, while you're doing it, you're sort of hating yourself a little bit for feeling the need to do it because you're not really having fun anymore.
I've kind of likened those games, the open world genre as it is now, as like an evolution of the sort of classic early 3D platformer collect 'em up. You have to go, and sometimes we've spoke about this on air and off. Sometimes these games, they haven't matured as quickly as their graphics have content-wise. So going into a field halfway through a side quest to go save someone's daughter and collect X amount of daisies out of the field doesn't really seem to fit with the narrative of a Viking. Not that that's in Valhalla, but it was just an illustration of some random thing they wanted.
There's things in Valhalla, like there's a part of the game where you go fishing. And you catch certain fish and bring them back and trade them. And it's like, I'm playing a Viking game. Why do I want to go fishing? Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, it's too much. You're putting too much, you're thinking too hard about it. There's too much detail in there. And I know exactly what you mean. And I find as well, I wrote an article a few months ago now for a magazine called Fusion, which is a retro gaming magazine. Yeah. And I wrote an article for them commenting that I find that with modern gaming now, because I do like these open play games, I do like that kind of thing. I don't know why. I'm just I guess I'm older now, so my reflexes probably aren't what they were. So I like a game where I can meander a little bit, and where I can play a younger, more muscular man. That's great. I find that I'm watching these games as much as I'm playing them. Do you know what I mean? You suddenly become aware of that. You're enjoying it. Oh wow! Look at the graphics. Look at the canyon. Look at the forest. Oh my God! Look at that castle. And you're playing, and suddenly you're realizing that half the time you just sat there with your pad in your hand, just waiting for the cut screen to go. And it's like the programmer has suddenly got a serious like, I want to direct a movie sort of bug, and he's like no, forget the game. I want this camera angle and that camera angle. And you're kind of like, yeah, but we're supposed to be playing a video game. Where's the game? you know, and it's lovely to watch, and I do enjoy it. And they do a good job, but quite often it's a bit more like an interactive movie than it is a video game, you know.
I totally agree. I mean, to your point of maturing into a different style of game, I love like an interactive movie now, whereas, I wouldn't have been a fan of it. Yeah, I like Heavy Rain. Yeah. I've recently played Beyond Two Souls, which has been fantastic. Before we're getting very sidetracked here, but one question I've got, in the 90s, obviously you had your whole life out in front of you and you were very hands-on with the software companies and the games, everything that was coming out. If someone had asked you then, what does gaming in 2021 feel like? Do you think you'd have been close, or because in that era, would it have been, well, I think we'll have more platform games and the graphics will be more lifelike, and we were very hemmed in our appreciation and style of gaming that we would play. That's changed massively. Could you see any of that coming back then? I know I couldn't, but what about you?
No, definitely not. I think in the 90s, if we'd have had to give an idea of what we thought gaming would be like now, 20 years on or whatever, I think it would have been very much like, almost like, looking at the Demolition Man movie or Blade Runner or something like that, Yeah. We thought we were going to be a hell of a lot further on than we actually are, Yeah. In the 90s, I remember, around about, early 90s, there was a company called VR Technologies. And VR Technologies I think it was a British company, and they produced virtual reality games. And you had this big helmet that you saw in Gamesmaster, that you put over your face and everything. And that was the early 90s, and that was being developed. And then later on, I think 3DO were doing some 3D stuff as well. They had a 3D helmet you put on over. I think we all just assumed that by now everything would be in 3D. We just assumed that we'd be gaming in 3D. Not the odd little quirky thing, the old Sony TV goggles and everything. I think we thought we'd be doing it a lot more rather than just wearing headphones and shouting at our friends down the internet. I think we thought we'd actually be far more immersed than we are. So, in that respect, I don't think it's gone anywhere near as far as we thought it would be. All that seems to have happened is everything's got bigger. Somebody the other day gave me a Raspberry Pi with the full Amiga catalog on it to use. The full Amiga catalog, and the thing's this big. Yeah. Yet if I want to play Cyberpunk or something like that, I gotta go make my dinner while the thing downloads. I don't even get to take the game home in the box. I've got to get it from the internet. I've paid all that money and I own nothing. Yeah, I can own the whole Amiga catalog on a tiny little device. I can get ROMs for for retro systems. You can get almost every game ever made and put it on a memory stick. And so why has everything suddenly got so big? Admittedly, the landscapes and everything are bigger, but I wonder, has programming got lazy? Is it lazy? Have people stopped trying to compress things? Have people stopped working out how to make things smaller because everything just seems to sprawl now?
Well, you say that. I mean, Elite, I think, fitted on a very, very small amount of data. Yeah. Now if they were trying to compress a game down, it just wouldn't be. Whether there's a compromise in textures and other bits, I don't know. Dave, is that it? Is that drawn a line under your gaming activities for this week?
For this week, that's pretty much what I've been doing lately. I mean, I went back to Amiga. I had a lovely day the other day. About a month ago, my daughter's boyfriend came round, and she had some university work to do, so he needed entertaining for the day, as it were. And so he come through, and I got the Amiga out, and I said, we're going to do some old gaming. So we played Amiga. Amiga's my favorite system, and we did some old, and we got to Speedball 2, and we played Speedball 2, and one of those games we were flicking through, and we started playing it, and we got hooked on it all over again. Sort of like that, because I thought he wouldn't get hooked on the old games because they do look very minimal compared to the modern games, but we had to wait until we'd finished the game, and so Speedball 2 was a good one because that's a great game, a frustrating game because it's too small, but a really, really good game. And I have to admit as well, I have succumbed to the to the iPad gaming world as well. You know, I've got myself addicted on one of those games. I've been playing it for about 6 years now. I loop into that.
Let's have the scoop on that, Dave. What have you been playing? Confess your sins, sir. What have you been playing on the iPad?
I like War Dragons on the iPad. A game called War Dragons.
What is this? Eh? What is War Dragons?
I love dragons. I always have. Yeah, Game of Thrones. And, you know, I'm doing a YouTube at the moment for my top 10 Amiga games, and there's a few dragon ones in there. It's doing the top 10 Amiga games. I suddenly realized how much I love bloody dragon games. And in this game, you just raise dragons and you build a base, and then you fly your dragons against other people's bases, and you get resources and you breed eggs and breed more dragons. So it's like just a typical
defense game. Yeah,
it's a typical resource defense game sort of thing. Yeah. But for me, this is going to sound really basic to game any gamer around about between 19 and 25. This is going to sound pretty basic what I'm about to say, and they may not realize, but in the 90s, of course, when I was playing competitively in the 80s and 90s, the early years, we had no internet. So the only way you played competitively against people was if they were in the same room as you. Or if you had a mate who was really bloody good on PCs, then he would LAN you up. You know, you'd have a PC in one bedroom, and then you'd have the wires going down the hallway, and you'd have the PC in the other bedroom, and you'd play against each other on Unreal or Doom or something, you know, and you'd be in the other rooms stalking each other. And that was great. And then the internet came along, probably about 95, 96 was when it started becoming reasonably available to everybody. But still online gaming was pretty minimal. And then when online gaming took off, because of who I was at the time with Games World and Gamesmaster and the games magazines, etc., I instantly became a sculp in that everybody wanted to play me online because they wanted to tell everybody they'd beaten me or hadn't, you know, because no one ever tells you tells anybody that when you've beaten them, but they'll tell everybody you become a sculp. So the whole kind of thing started to feel a bit uneven, you know, a bit like me being like saying I was a centerfold and I walked out of the Playboy Mansion, and all I had to date was a bunch of office workers and nerds. Do you know what I mean? It's just like it's like hang on, you know, I'm the top piece of meat here. I deserve, you know, that's the world I should be operating in. But online, so I didn't want to be online, and it to become a hassle all the time with people constantly trying to get you to play them and trying to join. So I never played online. I refused to play online just for the sake, because I didn't want to spoil it. So I would always play in the same room as people or over LAN or something. But I decided not to go the online route. So when I started playing War Dragons on my iPad, that's the first time I've actually played in a game where you're playing against people all over the world. You know, the whole thing is like, you know, over the internet, and you got your chat rooms and everything. And it's the first time I'd done that, and I found it quite refreshing and quite enjoyable.
Oh, that's actually quite a little poignant story there, Dave.
Yeah. You know, just moved in. It's just playing for fun's sake, because for a lot of years I couldn't play for fun's sake because people just wouldn't let me. You know, if I'm online, no, I can't play for fun because people want to beat me. They want to get a higher score than me. They want to do it because I kind of created that for that atmosphere for myself, and I appreciate that. But it made it hard for me to do that. And also for years, when I was traveling all over the country and playing, you know, in shops, in shopping malls, at competitions, you know, for the magazines and for the TV shows and so forth, I wasn't playing the games that I wanted to play because you can't. Because when you go, say I was hired to go to Sheffield or to go to Manchester or to go to Edinburgh or somewhere to open a shop or to do a games challenge for charity or something, usually it would be sponsored, and usually I'd be told the game I was playing on the day. You're going to play NBA Jam, you're going to play Street Fighter, you're going to play Mortal Kombat, Shadow Fighter, Eternal Champions. Yeah, they give me the game. They tell me the game I was going to play because that's the game that's being promoted at the time. So for the week or so before that challenge or whatever, I'd be playing that game constantly to get to a decent enough level so that when I turned up, it was worth people's while playing me, because nobody wants to turn up and me be absolutely rubbish at the game. Sorry,
you're all good.
So I'd be a bit like an athlete. I'd be playing games constantly to get better and better, so I could put on a show when I turned up at places. But the thing is, if you want to play Football Manager, or if you want to play, say, Age of Empires or Populous or something like that, the game that involves a lot of time.
Yeah.
You can't play those games because those games are never going to be a challenge. So my life at that time, I was more often than not having to play games that weren't necessarily what I wanted to play. So now I enjoy playing these big, time-consuming games because I can. It's great.
Nice.
Long answer to a short question.
Okay. Well, everyone's probably very happy you're with us, but they're all probably equally confused because the former co-host of the show is out on tag.
I am.
How's Big Rick?
He's all right. You made up that law for me. Oh,
yes, I did.
Disgusting.
You've got a same-sex partner in your prison cell.
I have.
You have?
Yeah.
Anyway, let's cut to the chase. What have you been playing?
Well, leading on from Dave talking about Mortal Kombat 2, I've been playing Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate, which I picked up in the sale about a month ago. I play that a bit with a mate online, and then I try the story mode. It's quite good. I feel like they've made good leaps and bounds for those, with it being a beat 'em up. Yeah, I don't really have a go-to character. I'm a sucker for all the... No.
It's proven that she is of mediocre standard in Mortal Kombat.
I basically bought it so I could do like Rambo versus Terminator and RoboCop versus Terminator.
Was the most predictable thing you could ever say. What else are you playing?
Outer Wilds. Quite nice. Good? Yeah, it's all right. I think after you play No Man's Sky, I don't think it would seem that great.
Fisher Price, my first No Man's Sky.
Something along those lines, yeah. The usual online games. Yeah, I'm not allowed to mention those. Yeah.
Games. Okay.
I've been revisiting a few of the PS4 games that have been upgraded for PS5. I don't know much about retro.
Are you playing these PS4 games?
Oh, that is retro for me, I suppose.
PS4 retro now, is it? Bloody hell.
In Tom's mind, if a game came out 6 months ago,
I will say, like, gameplay still holds up for certain retro games. Like, if I play through Streets of Rage 2, it's just as good as 4, it's a similar style game, isn't it? But you know what I'm saying? Like, the classics still are really playable, even now.
Wow.
It's surprising, isn't it? It's surprising they let them have games like that in prison.
It is, yeah. Yeah.
You think they'd even get them all het up, you know?
He saw the tag, he saw the little stripe,
Dave's
arrows.
full on in the law. I'm overwhelmed.
Well, you know, we're going to have to...
I best move on and ask you what you've been playing.
Well, it's no surprise to anyone here. I've been playing PSP again in my bed. My 2 gamer rooms, they're dead to me now. The annex, there's no more. I just play PSP.
So much more room for activities.
Oh, so much more room.
PSP's a weird one, though, isn't it? PSP, my favourite handheld of all time. Absolutely. I still have one and quite a good number of games on it and movies. Love that machine. Loved it more before Sony locked it down, ruined it. But Sony didn't know what they had, I don't think. They had a machine that the games industry was excited about because you could program for it, you could hack it, and people loved that, and it made it a versatile piece of equipment. And then Sony, in their infinite wisdom, started shutting the whole thing down by putting updates in all the latest games. But as much as I love it, I do love the PSP. I particularly like the Wipeout games on it.
They are good on there.
When you find yourself playing it, I don't know. I check myself occasionally, and I just realise I'm just this hunched over guy in the corner of a room, staring at a tiny screen for hours.
Yeah,
it's a bit sad, isn't it? If you imagine going out of body on yourself, watching yourself playing a PSP, you'd be a bit horrified, you know.
I tell you what, If the coolest man from the 90s says playing PSP is sad, I shall have a ceremonial burning on completion of the show. So
I love the PSP. I just said it looks a bit sad.
I know, but you're like the good taste
PSP
barometer, and we're all the way around at Stormy right now. It's not looking good for the PSP collection. It's not looking good at all. But I agree to you. I don't think they knew what they had. I think they were particularly harsh on themselves for sales. I think they did, 80 million, which is not a joke. Obviously, compared to the Game Boy or the DS, whatever they were calling it at the time, it wasn't significant. But, this thing literally was the Walkman for the 21st century. You could watch movies in it on the proprietary format. You could download movies from your computer in a dodgy space, and they would work as well, and music and photos. And it was doing things iPhones weren't doing years in advance. Amazing.
And it was happening so fast. I mean, you had the whole homebrew market and everything. There was even, which was a cool name for it. There was just cool stuff coming out all the time. The guys that were hacking and homebrewing, they were getting well known. Everything about it was just moving. It was what people have been waiting for, because the problem with consoles, when consoles took over from the home computers, was they were not very interactive. You felt kind of separated from the machine, and people like it when they can still affect the machine in some way. And the PSP momentarily gave people that, but they took it away. The PSP had so much potential. Yes, it realised some of it, and I'm enjoying the games more now than I did back in the day. I'm finding just maybe game experiences that I would have passed by at the time, and I just like collecting for it as well. Because the nice thing about the PSP as well, of course, was that they were developing, unheard of, they were developing, original titles for the handheld. We'd be grown up pretty much with handhelds. They were just like scaled down versions of the bigger game that weren't quite as good as the bigger game. Whereas on the PSP, you were getting something completely fresh every time. Def Jam and things like that. It was just they were doing some great stuff. Yeah,
and even when they did scale stuff down, as you say, it was still competent enough machine for it not to look. It's not like playing the game on the 16-bit Mega Drive and then taking that same game by name and putting it in a Game Gear or a Game Boy. I mean, it's just not the same. Whereas the game on the PS2 and the PSP look very similar. And some of the developed for PSP, this is like my dream show, this is, because we've ended up talking about PSP for an outrageous amount of time. So that's fine. But, there's some wonderful experiences on there.
And it felt cool, didn't it? I mean, the little disky cartridge things that I can't even remember what they were called.
UMD
at the top. Sorry,
UMD.
They looked and felt good, didn't they? Do you know what I mean? Everything about it just was a little bit special and space agey, and it just was a real feel good machine. And
I think it was the culmination of a few. Obviously, mini disc was the sort of, they'd managed to cram that format down. It wasn't a mini disc, but it was like a metallic, a magnetic version of the UMD. And obviously the PlayStation button layout had already been refined, and the screen looks absolutely phenomenal. You put a film in there, and although it's not got the same lines,
quality,
it looks good, doesn't it? So there we go. There's
definitely the best of the handhelds, in my opinion. Definitely.
Okay, well, we've already had one night of the show. I do believe we're now going to knight you to David Perry for services to gaming and PSP love generally, I think.
Woo!
So arise. So, David.
I'm already standing. I'm just not very tall.
Okay, right. Well, the whole scale thing is completely gone. Right. With that, it's time for the news. So, scour the very darkest regions of the internet to bring you the latest stories. Tom?
I think you better read these due to me not having my glasses.
Right, okay. So, they're not allowed sharp objects or glass in prison. So, I'm now reading first bit of news. Vita means life. You see how we segued from PSP to Vita?
Nice, smooth.
Some people think this is a thrown together piece of trash show, Dave, but I'll have you know.
I thought we were making it up as we went along. But
don't say that out loud.
Story of my life, this.
Okay.
Set up.
No, well, we've got Michael Aspel to wheel in for you in a minute, so you best be ready. Sony's closing the PS Vita store on the 27th of August, despite new games being in development for the platform. The short notice and poor communication from the platform holder has resulted in the cancellation of numerous projects from over the past 48 hours, while other indie developers are scrambling to complete their in-progress titles in time. The manufacturer will cease certification of software on its handheld platform from the 12th of July, leaving indie teams with weeks to finish their games and a minuscule window to actually sell them. For developers like Lilimo Games, the makers of Abroxia 2, this has resulted in the cancellation of its next title. Other releases like Thief's Roulette and Lazar have been canned, but some studios are forging ahead. We already reported on Scourgebringer, which will have a window of just 100 days to sell its game. Spooky Squid Games has confirmed that it will hustle to release Russian Subway Dogs as planned. I mean, that sounds like an amazing game. And Suicidal Robot Games, equally high level of quality, has made a similar pledge for the hand cannon Yankee. This letter is documenting its progress on Twitter. In terms of developer relations, the whole scenario is terrible on Sony's side. Lilimo Games recently purchased a PS Vita development kit, brand new, which was supplied by Sony, without any further information about its intentions to close the storefront. Giving consumers such short notice is poor, but failing to communicate with its loyal development partners is seemingly unforgivable. I don't know whether you kept abreast of that whole situation, Dave, but obviously Sony looking to kill off what they call now legacy systems, so PlayStation 3, the aforementioned console of dreams, the PSP, and its little sister, another sweet love of mine, the Vita.
I got to be honest with you, no.
Okay.
I've not kept abreast of any of it. The Vita kind of, for me, I was, like I said, I loved the PSP. When the Vita came along, it just all started to smack a little bit of Nintendo to me. You know, when you had the Game Boy, then you had the Game Boy Advance, then you had the Game Boy this and the Game Boy that. It's just like it was just starting to make up too many systems that were too similar to the last systems, and I switched off. I just I didn't really look at Vita, and but I did hear about the PS3 thing recently, and it's naughty shutting the store and everything, but the PS3 was a pile of rubbish anyway.
Oh my goodness gracious me! Well, this has been the shortest show in Unofficial Controller podcast history.
It's the one console that actually made the original Xbox look slimline.
Oh my god! Oh,
I've seen houses held up by PS3s.
I've got 6 of them. They're actually the foundation stones of my house.
I was going to say, yeah, you must be on the ground floor.
Yeah, and I still play that system every day. I don't know what it is about it. Some of the games that are peculiar to it, I kind of like, and it's got some of the more quirky Japanese stuff that never.
I think we had 360 in that generation, didn't we? So you missed out.
360 at the time, so PS3 now almost kind of feels like a new console. So
yeah, it definitely was one of those situations whereby the PS, it was almost like the Saturn and the PlayStation when that first happened. In that the PlayStation was so damn good that nobody really paid much attention to the Saturn. And the same happened, I think, to the PlayStation 3. I think Sony dropped a major bollock on that one because the 360, I assume bollock is PG.
We're going to let it slide. It is now.
Because the 360 was so dominant, has such a great games catalogue, that the PlayStation 3 came along and it barely made a dent, apart from the gotta haves, you know, and the completed people who were brand loyal. The 360 wiped the floor with it, really. The
year that they got to get on the ground and get their games out, so obviously Sony was still coming to market with, you know, rocky looking launch games.
What's the price point as well when they launched? It was like massive.
$699, wasn't it? Or $650 or something like that. So it wasn't cheap.
And it had that awful Spider-Man font on the front.
It did.
I remember that. I remember the first time I saw it, I said, what the hell? You know, the Sony branding was so strong, and the original PlayStation loved the way it looked. The PlayStation 2 warmed to the way it looked. You know, it had the nice blue glowing digital lights on it, and neon lights and everything, which were great, and it had all the nice black, you know, lines going through it and everything. And all of a sudden, this brick arrived with a Spider-Man font on the front.
It's like you're disrespecting my child.
You're like, what the hell? You know, it's like Sony completely forgot their own branding. You know, it was
I think they thought because they owned the Spider-Man brand that they could just use that font if they wanted to.
I think they did.
That's exactly what happened. It's craziness, really. But,
maybe the console got bitten by an arachnid in a radioactive lab somewhere. I don't know.
Maybe,
but it was horrible.
Yeah, throw a PS3 at a wall, it will stick. It will do all sorts of stuff.
There won't be a wall there anymore.
They'll probably not. I don't know what it's hanging on. Some dodgy-looking web shot by myself, I should imagine. So basically... Sony are shutting down the legacy system stores, so you can't go on the PSP and buy games, you can't go on the PS3 and buy games, you can't go on the Vita and buy games. That's bad enough as it is. You can get access to your downloads that you already own, so they're being reasonably respectful there. It's been one of my worries that digital games just disappear into the ether and you never see them again. So allowing you access to your purchased content is good.
They've done a similar thing with the movie store as well, because you can no longer.
They shut their own.
I know not a lot of people stream, but I used to think, I'll rent one of the latest releases. But they don't have that anymore.
Well, I tell you what serves the gamers right. Absolutely serves them right, because we used to have the power. You know, when everything was on console and everything was on a cart or even on a DVD or a CD, we had the power because we went into the relationship was very simple between the consumer and the format provider. Very, very simple in that you brought out a game, right? You tickled it up to us. You marketed it. You went to the magazines. You advertised it. You tickled it up to us. We read the reviews. The game gets, 85%, whatever. It's of a genre we like. So we go and buy it. Walk into the shop. It's $39.99. Okay. You pay your $39.99. But for your $39.99, boom, you've got everything. You've got the whole game. It's in your hand and you own it. And you have no connection to that developer beyond walking out that store. You've done a very simple, very trustworthy deal. They've produced a game. You've given them the money for the game. You've shaken hands on it metaphorically. You've left the shop.
Yeah.
Good. Everything's straight and above board. And you've got control as the gamer because you play that game. And now if they want your money again, they've not only got to make sure that game was good, but they've got to make sure the sequel they're bringing out or the next game along in the franchise or whatever is equally as good. And once again, goes to the various review boards, magazines, etc., gets the good scores, tickles you up, and gets you to go in there and buy it again. And so the pressure is all on the developer to keep giving you quality. You're in control. You say yay or nay on these games. Now, what they've gradually done is with the internet is they sell you a part of a game, and quite often the game's not even finished. You get it home, and it's still still bugged to hell. They're still having to sort it out, and then you have to download stuff, and then if that website goes down, if they close the shop like they have done now. Or if your internet's not working for the day or whatever, you can't play the game. You've paid around £60 now, almost double what you used to pay, but you're not in control. You physically don't have anything. Also, what they have is a financial umbilical cord attached to you, just like in the Matrix, where all those babies are in those bubbles, and they're all attached to the machine and feeding it with energy. And they have this fake illusion of this wonderful life they're having, like the game you're playing. You have this fake illusion of being in control. You're the gamer. This is your game. You're playing it on the telly. But actually, you're not. They still own the game. You still don't have the game. They still have half the game on their servers. Yeah. And they're still downloading stuff. And through that game, they're then selling you some new weapons. They're selling you some new armor. They're selling you another scenario. They're selling you some new characters you can play with in the game. Well, hang on. Why weren't they in the game in the first place? Now makes me mistrust them. It's no longer an honest deal between player and developer.
You very eloquently touch on a topic I've been trying to put words into for, I don't know, maybe for the
I think that's summarised that so well.
Yeah, I've always been very nervous.
And it's happened to us, and we've turned a blind eye to it as games players.
Yeah.
It's been allowed to happen. And now it's almost impossible to reverse now, other than don't play games online. Don't buy these games unless the complete game is in the box. Refuse to buy it, but that will never happen. And what they've done is, I tell you what, I was in America in the 90s again, and the other David Perry, the one who was shiny and everything, MTK and from Jim and everything. He said to me at the time, he said he was no longer developing games to sell. He said he was developing games to be given away for free. He said, in the future, people will be giving games away for free. And I was like, at the time, I was like, no, that'll never happen. That'll never happen. But him and developers at the time saw the potential in it. You basically, you virtually give the game away for free, and then you make the sales inside the game, and that describes the app market, very much like Dragon Wars and things like that I play now. but also that's moved now into mainstream consoles as well. In that you can't have the full game experience unless you keep on paying. How much does a copy of FIFA cost every year to a serious player?
Yeah,
you pay your 50 quid for it, whatever it is, and then you buy your cards, and then you get into your game modes and your ultimate team modes, and you're putting hundreds and hundreds of pounds back in it. Now, if I told you you could play FIFA, on your PS5 today, but the game's going to cost you 250 quid, you'd go to me, no fucking way. Sorry, no way am I paying that for a video game. 250 quid, no way am I paying it. But you're gonna.
Yeah.
The thing is, they're just being sneaky. It's not above board. It's
the death by 1,000 cuts business model, isn't it? That's what I don't like about it. And you're absolutely right. You own nothing. You have the extension of a license between you and the provider for a short period of time. But if they take that game, you can't complain for it to come back because you have no digital right.
No, they shut it. They shut it down. And I appreciate that. And there's another reason why I started playing these online games on the iPad, and War Dragons got me hooked. But I became very aware with that in the early days I had to spend money to play at the level I wanted to play at. Now I don't. Now I'm a good enough player. I don't have to do that. But now I've played this game for 5 years or so. But I'm very aware that if they shut the servers down on it tomorrow, 5 years of game playing, I can never play that game again. It's gone because I don't own it.
Yeah.
I don't own it. I don't.
Even crept into your dragon world.
Yeah, yeah. But you imagine modern gamers, they're spending all this money on FIFA, all this money on all these online games, Cyberpunk and all these games. But will they ever? We used to be able to realize our asset ultimately by selling it in a car boot sale.
Yeah,
or by selling it, if you kept it long enough, sell it online to a collector if you had a good version of a game that was desirable or whatever. But it was yours to sell.
Yeah.
But today's gamers, they're not going to have anything to sell.
No. At the moment, I think that lets you Games Pass or PS Now or one of those gaming subscription services, at the moment, they've crept under the wire. They're very low cost. There's a very large amount of returned material provided. It is a great deal. You'll never hear me say it's not a great deal. But what I don't like is the Trojan horse style effect of creeping into some of the conversation points you've had. That is we've opened the castle doors and saying, come in, look at all these games for X a month. This is amazing. Oh, wow, I can't play them all. Boom. As soon as they've got a position of strength, the doors will close, the games will dry up, and the price will go up.
Yeah, they will.
And you won't own anything. And
they will. The
God
business.
forbid you've bought a console without a disc tray on the front, because then you are totally committed to that model. So
exactly. The new PS5s, the digital download only and everything, horrify me. Absolutely horrify me. I'm old school. I still buy albums. I still buy vinyl, and I still buy. If I like a record, I'll buy it on CD. Records. No one even calls them that anymore, do they? If I still like an album, I'll buy it on DVD or I'll buy it on vinyl because I enjoy physically owning something and putting it in a machine to play it. This whole idea, but my daughter and obviously some of the guys I work with at the studio and younger people, this whole Spotify, Apple Music thing, that horrifies me because I hate the thought of becoming emotionally invested in something that can just be taken from me at any point. Do you know what I mean? I like to have it.
Yeah.
If it's in my life, it's in my life, and it's physically in my life.
I've just moved house recently, and it goes to show, we've not got Wi-Fi.
You've moved cell.
We're still doing law.
Yeah,
anyway, I haven't got any sort of Wi-Fi connection or anything like that. So all I've got is 4G on my phone, and you feel powerless. I can't watch a movie. I've got physical collection of films and some music, and I've got a lot of video games. But a lot of the stuff that I'm currently playing or watching or listening to, it's just not there. It's unreachable, which is, like you say, very scary.
And you don't realize till Wi-Fi goes, you don't realize how reliable you are. It's once again going back to the Matrix, going back to the third Matrix film, where Neo goes down in Zion. He goes down into the pit with the big boss, Big Cheese, and it's late at night and they're not sleeping. And he's looking at the machines and the Big Cheese, the president, whatever. He says, "I like to come down here and I like to watch the machines." And he said, it makes you wonder, who's really in charge. And Neo says to him, "Well, we can turn the machines off." And he says, "Can we?" you know, and we're in that situation, you know, because you think you're in charge, but you turn that Wi-Fi off, and you just don't realize how much now it's running your life.
Yeah,
your whole life goes through it.
Yeah,
watch a bunch of kids melt down as soon as you turn their Wi-Fi off. Oh my god, I don't know what to do.
Yeah,
throw a ball into the room and turn the Wi-Fi off. You watch them turn on that ball, they'll tear it to shreds.
Let me bring you some element of something good that's come out of all of this streaming thing. It's the next bit of news. We call it all the hits. You got all of Microsoft's commitment to backwards compatibility. The Xbox team has announced today that 16 classic original Xbox and Xbox 360 titles are now available via the cloud, with more to come soon. These are available to access for Games Pass Ultimate members on Android devices via Project X Cloud. Not only that, Jetpack Refueled, Viva Pinata, and Viva Pinata TIP are all getting touch controllers as well. Here's the full list of games that are now supported via Games Pass Ultimate: Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, Double Dragon Neon, Fable 2, Fallout New Vegas, Gears of War 2, 3, Gears of War Judgment. One has to wonder where Gears of War 1 is. Jetpack Refueled, touch control enabled. Cameo, a much unloved game, but I think it's amazing. Perfect Dark Zero. The greatest Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, the lesser brother, Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. The aforementioned Viva Pinata with touch controls enabled, Viva Pinata TIP with touch controls enabled. The Xbox team is calling this a new journey for the backward compatibility program, explaining that games from previous generations available on mobile devices have been a highly requested feature. Being able to take a trip down memory lane, either to relive past memories or make new ones with a classic, is delightful and critical to preserving gaming's history. We've enabled this experience through our backward compatibility program, launched in 2015. Since then, we've launched multiple consoles and still committed to making games across generations available to you, no matter the hardware. So there's a yin and there's a yang. See what we've done there, Dave? There's a yin and there's a yang story there. So in some way, the evil witch Wi-Fi has created a way for people to be able to play the... All right, yeah, it's going to cost them $10.99 a month or whatever the price is, but they want to whip their phone out, want to whip out a Bluetooth controller or some of these touch controls. They can play some pretty awesome games. What do you think about that little spike of news?
Well, to be honest with you, most of those games I didn't want to play anyway. But so you can play Viva Pinata on your mobile phone. Is that what that's saying?
Apparently so. Yep, on your Android.
I quite like Viva Pinata.
Me too.
Yeah.
I think I've discovered my brother. I never realised we were related, Dave. Apart from your PS3,
I like Viva Pinata until I discovered that you can make loads of what you need from growing. I can't even. It's so long since I played it. But the awful thistly things you grow, and they puff out like poisonous stuff in the corner of the You grow loads of them in the corner of the field. I can't remember. They're nasty, but you make all your money out of them. I can't remember now exactly what they do, but I remember that's the way to get ahead. And I got a bit bored then once I worked that one out. But I like it.
Yeah, I always thought that it was Rare's strongest game that they released on the 360. That's probably going to cause controversy all over the place. But for me, I don't know. Did you play Viva Pinata?
I didn't. I've played quite a few of the games on there. Some of those were launch titles for the 360, weren't they?
It's a nice game. It capitalizes upon the whole the same psychology from like fishing. You know what I mean? There's something very addictive. I don't know if you fish. There's something very addictive about fishing. You know, you sit there and you cast out and you put your bait on and you float on and you're at the right depth and you're sitting there and you're waiting and you're watching your float bob. And Viva Pinata is like that. Once you've done the initial sort of charging about and turning the ground over and planting stuff, you're like desperately waiting to see, you know, whether a little badger or a squirrel or something will wander into your garden. And it's, you know, and it's that same sort of mentality, you know. Yeah. But we love games like that. It's quite.
I think it's the game that they probably shouldn't have ignored, but for some reason did. You know, they doubled down on the big names like Perfect Dark and all that sort of nonsense. But Viva Pinata to me was a new IP. It looked great. It was interesting to play. It was different. I think the way it was drawn and animated still looks amazing to this day. Yeah, you've touched on a very raw nerve in Viva Pinata there, aren't you?
Yeah, I like Viva Pinata. So you can play these old games then over Xbox Live or whatever, is it?
You can, if you've got Games Pass Ultimate, you can play these games anyway. If you've got Games Pass Ultimate and an Android phone, and you've got a lot of Xbox games have got an Android phone and they've got this app, so that now means
can you take Viva Pinata and put it in your Xbox One, your new machine?
Yes,
play it.
Yeah, through Games Pass. You can't. In fact, if you had the disc version, you would be able to put your game in that console. Now, the only thing I don't know is some games go up to the cloud and pull down a newer version of the game that's got the better graphics. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas is a prime example. I think the game that's on the disc is not the game that the machine loads. It goes off and gets the mobile phone version and brings.
So if it's not on the cloud, it's not going to play your game.
With Xbox, no, that's the way it is. Yeah. It needs to be part of their backwards compatibility list. You can't just slap in Barbie's Horse Adventures and expect it to play.
Okay. Yeah.
But,
cool,
sounds like you've got a pretty large catalogue. Tradition normally dictates that you read this final bit of news. So, Dave.
Have I got to do it, have I?
I think,
tradition and all that.
Yeah, you're part of the law now, so it's kind of.
I guess so. Let's have a look. Animal House, is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Oh, such a good film.
Sadly, nothing to do with the blurb underneath. That's what headlines do, Dave. They pull you in.
Oh. one of the best pair of boobs I remember seeing as a young man. Entering puberty. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much, Animal House. Right. If you've been hoping to track down a pack of the Animal Crossing Sanrio Amiibo cards, now's your chance. The cards have finally become available at the Nintendo official UK store. Each pack includes cards for Ria, Monty, Etwai, here we go. Kyle, Chai, Chelsea, and Toby, and will no doubt sell out super fast. Oh, not just fast, super fast.
Super fast.
It's Nintendo. Everything at Nintendo sells that super fast. Super fasticom. Okay. It's priced at £4.99. It's a bargain, isn't it? £4.99 used to get you an album. And Nintendo notes that orders are very strictly limited to one order per household. Oh.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
It's serious.
They've been available to order in the US for a little while now, and scalpers are already demanding well beyond $100 USD per pack. Make sure to grab these while you can.
Have you forayed into the world of the Nintendo Switch, or was that a step too far for you?
Oh, I'm not playing that. It's gay, isn't it? It's for girls. It's not a man's machine, is it? Nothing about it looks manly. I'm sure in Japan it's a man's machine, but not in this country. It's not a man's machine.
Okay.
People will play it because people are Nintendo loyal, aren't they? So they'll play it. But no, I'm not playing that.
I tell you what, though, you have got some of the. Normally, I would take 1,000 words to get to that point, but you just smashed it out in a heartbeat, which is absolutely phenomenal.
Go on.
So let's draw a line under the news. We've got something far more interesting to talk about. But before we do you, dear listener, have an opinion or take on the news that we missed? If so, Tom, how would the collective masses get in contact with us?
You can reach us at questions@unofficialcontrollerpodcast.com, which is the email, or you can contact us on Instagram and direct messages on there, or Twitter.
That's correct. And in there is a link tree, take you to our Discord, where you can meet the wonderful community that surrounds us and binds us a little bit like the Force. It makes us something better than we are. So we always say very nice things about our listeners, Dave. They're very kind to us. They're very excited that you were coming on, by the way.
Really?
Yes.
God bless them.
The Nintendo fans have all just turned off. But...
Yeah, the PS3 loyals.
Nintendo fans know where they stand with me. They always have.
Yeah.
They've choked out early doors. So they didn't get out the news.
No, they're all clutching their copies of Mario 64 waiting. They know their time's coming.
I think that's exactly what's happened. Wonderful. Right, let's get into the feature. We've kept this man long enough. Okay. As always, we reached out to the listeners and they posed some questions. Some made the show, some didn't. But bear in mind, every single week we put up a topic, put your comment on there, and we'll try and get them on the show. We read every single one of them. We might not just be able to get every single one of them on the show. To that point, we let you know that, as he's now known, Sir Dave Perry is coming on the show. And we ask you your thoughts. We've interwoven those into the feature. Let's go back, Dave, if we may. A local boy who left, is it Torquay or Torbay you were from?
Torquay. Torquay is in Torbay. Torbay is made up of Torquay, Painted and Brixham.
So that was where, if we could travel back in time, a young Dave Perry would be skulking around.
That's right. Yeah. That's where I popped out my mum's vagina.
Okay. Well, you left there and you went to the Bath Academy of Art.
Yeah.
Now, was that with the idea of going into video games, or was that the idea of going into magazines? What was the thought process all those years ago about going to Bath Academy of Art?
I was just really, really good at art. And from a very early age, I was carrying a carrier bag full of pens and pads and that around with me. And everywhere I went, I would sit and draw. You leave it in my hand, I'll sit and draw, and I would be drawing constantly. I did O-level, A-level, and then I went and did a diploma in design and photography. And I just didn't know what to do with myself, really, in the world, as you don't when you're younger. And art was just the thing that I'd always had. So I just followed it along. And then I was doing a diploma, and my tutor said to me, in the diploma, you had competitions, and I won 5 out of 4 competitions during my diplomas 2 years. And my tutor said to me, no one from this course has ever got onto a Bachelor of Arts honours degree. And for me, that's like a red flag. So red flag for a bull. So I applied and got onto an honours degree because I just wanted to be the first person that did that. But I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. And video games was just something I was playing on the outside of that, just for fun, and because I enjoyed it, because I was good at it. But that was recreational. I always had video games and art. And then in my last year, the Mac SE came out, and we had 2 Mac SEs at the university. And you used to have to go on a rota for a half an hour slot to have a go on them. So you had to have a rota. And it was clear to me that these things were going to change how design went going forward and magazines went forward. Because up to that point, we'd had to actually physically measure things out using points and picas. So when I came back, I ran off to Australia for a year, spent a year in Australia, came back and set up my own business. And I wanted to do desktop publishing at home because I knew that was the way everything was going, but I couldn't afford a Mac. And a doorman at a nightclub I worked in, he was doing IT stuff, and he told me that Amiga was the way forward because they were producing a lot of desktop publishing programs at the time, Publishing Manager and things like that. So I bought myself an Amiga because it was a lot cheaper, and put the 500k upgrade in the bottom and everything, and it was absolute tosh. It was rubbish. But it was great for playing games. And so my gaming went on to another level. At the time, I was working with a guy who'd converted an old Devon General bus, which is like an old public transport bus. And we were traveling all over the country with fairground people and with the circus and things like that. And wherever there was a festival, we'd turn up and they'd let us stay in their area of the park. And I'd produce signs and that for them from the bus using a generator and operating 2 computers. And I'd sit there with a Rottweiler called Layla, who was there to protect me because the computers were valuable. And then in my downtime, I would then play video games on the Amiga all the time. And that's when I got properly hooked. And that's when I saw that was my light bulb moment, if you like, because back then, if you wanted a video game, if I wanted the latest video game, if I wanted Speedball 2 or Player Manager or Kickoff 2 or something like that, there weren't many shops on the high street selling video games because it was so new. So you had no internet either. So you had to mail order your games. You joined a mail order club through a magazine. And the mail order clubs generally, some of them had subscriber magazines. So when you joined a certain area of the club, you got a subscription magazine about all the latest video games. So I did that. And when those magazines started coming through to me, I just realized that I could do the job. I could do it better. I could do it as well or better than some of the magazines that were coming through to me. So I thought, this is what I can do. I can design and I can write. So I applied to Intermediates, Special Reserve, who were a mail order company, to come to be a deputy editor on their magazines, and that was how I moved into the games industry. Then just
Special Reserve.
Special Reserve.
Dave,
you remember Special Reserve?
Oh, Dave, I loved Special Reserve.
Well, I did their magazines. If you ever got Confidential or NRG or Super NRG or any of their magazines came through, that was me. That was me in my early days.
I knew when I was doing the research that you were importing and selling games, but I thought, is he to do with Power Reserve? But no, you were. That's amazing. Okay. Well, from there, Special Reserve, you found your way to London. Now, tell me, how are Bob and Polly, and have you spoken to them recently?
Bob and Polly were my landlord and landlady in Great Hallingbury, and they were lovely, lovely people. They were like a mum and dad for me, really. Away from home, living in London, and I haven't spoken to them in years and years. When I left Hallingbury, when I left London, to move to Trowbridge and then to Bournemouth, I said goodbye, and that was it. Really, you don't keep in touch. I mean, especially when you're a young man, you tend to move on, and that's it. At the time, I was playing ice hockey for Stevenage as well, and I had all my ice hockey kit there, and I think I left it in their attic. I think I left them. So I like to think they sold it, because there was a lot of value in that. There was some good gear, so I like to think they sold that.
Bob and Polly, if you're listening, Dave wants his ice hockey gear back.
It probably smells by now. I don't think anything will.
What was the crack there? Obviously, you made your way to London, and you were living with Bob and Polly.
Yeah.
You had your Mini at the time as well, which was your modus of transport to get around the big smoke. How did you, a young man there in the city, a lot of people dream of finally getting into the city and all that sort of stuff, and you were there. Presumably the London move was to allow you access to Hewland International.
The London move, obviously, initially was to work for Special Reserve.
Yeah.
They were in Sawbridgeworth. And while I was with them, that was when I went and saw Hewland about the TV show, for helping them on Gamesmaster. And then I moved from Great Hallingbury to Harlow. Got a house in Harlow with a bunch of other guys. And that was when I started then commuting in from Epping every day into the Isle of Dogs via the London Light Dockland Railway. And so that was really why I went up there. I went up there because in Torquay, Torquay's a lovely place. I'm born there and I live there again now. I work there again now. I've come back. But when you're a young man, if you've got certain kind of dreams, you always end up having to leave Torquay, young man, young woman, because there's not a lot in Torquay, other than Torquinian type things to do, like work in a bar or things like that. Nothing wrong with that kind of thing. But I wanted to be in national magazines. I wanted to be on television. I wanted to live a life less ordinary. And to do that, I had to leave Torquay.
Well, I think you've done all right.
It worked out.
It kind of worked out, didn't it? Okay, question. So I don't know how to pick these next bits apart. So we've got some questions. I think we'll come back to the magazines after we've asked you about the Gamesmaster.
Sure.
Now, you moved to Hewland International. Obviously, I believe you probably took a pay cut from Special Reserve to go there.
I did, yeah. Special Reserve, within a year, I'd become the publishing manager there. So I was on okay money, my first proper job. And then, but the opportunity to go and work in television was too great to turn down. It was just so exciting. It was one of those things. Going to work in television was opening a huge door to a world where I didn't know where it could take me or what I could do with it.
No,
but I knew I wanted to be in that world because the opportunities there were just were endless, and it just seemed like a fantasy thing to do. Because once again, I keep saying back in the day, but going back to those times, people today don't quite get that you only had 4 channels on the telly. You know, Sky was very much an embryonic thing. Only the rich people had it, or the real early adopters, tech enthusiasts. Apart from that, you had 4 channels on your telly, and Channel 4 was a reasonably new thing. So to be on television was almost like becoming a god. Do you know what I mean? It was like, it was a whole other world that ordinary people could only dream about. And suddenly I had the opportunity to go and do it. And I didn't know quite where it would take me, where the rabbit hole would go, but it was worth it. It was worth trying and finding out. I was young. When you're young, you can take a few chances, and if it doesn't work out, you bounce back.
How old were you when you obviously reached out to Hewland International?
I think I was about 23, 24.
That's no age, is it?
It's not. It's not. It seemed late. Seems late to me when I think about it now. But no, it's not really. I mean, when I think that I did a diploma degree, I lived in Australia for a year. I travelled around in a bus. I became a publishing manager at a software importer, and then went and worked in television by 24. You know, it's pretty good.
It's very good.
I was overachieving, but you don't realize it at the time. You just, you know, you're bouncing from one thing to the next, aren't you? And you just, as a young man, you're never satisfied. You always want more.
I guess your only stick of measurement was yourself, and
yeah,
I guess everyone's guilty of this, but they always know. It's quite a toxic mind process, really. But I always, when I've done a project or whatever it is I've done, I always think to myself, did I give it 100%? Well, no, you weren't bleeding out the eyeballs. So technically that wasn't 100%. So there was always a little bit more you could have given. So when you're a young lad and you're bouncing from very exciting thing to exciting thing like you were, you must have felt, as you say, like a god. There's a couple of questions here. I've just got one more question for you myself. When you arrived there, you were one of the founding fathers, and I think that's been lost to time a little bit. And I want this podcast to be the place that puts that back on the map.
Sure.
Without you, in my humble opinion, there is no show.
Wow. Well, I appreciate that.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Without you, there would be no golden joystick at the very least.
That's true. The golden joystick, I take credit for that one, definitely.
Tell me, do you still speak to, obviously that was a Quick Joy joystick. Do you still, I think the guy that was working for them at the time was a guy called Richard Secular. Do you stay in contact with these people in the industry? No, I didn't. I jumping forward a long way. When I left the games industry around about 98, 99, I left it completely. Basically around that time, I left. I was in 98. I was filming. I hope I don't ruin your future questions, but in 98, I was filming Games World for Sky, Games World 4, and I didn't like the way it was going. They'd taken a very good show and they were ruining it as far as I was concerned. It wasn't for me. So halfway through my contract, I asked to be let out of my contract and leave the show. My girlfriend at the time was having my daughter. And I was in London filming, and I realized that I wasn't into what I was doing. And I was missing the pregnancy and then my daughter growing up. So I pulled out of that, and then I went back and I worked on the magazines. And the company I worked for, Rapid Publishing, they went bust in 99. All of a sudden, I was in Bristol at the time, and I got a phone call saying to rush back because the company had gone under. I had no idea. So I rushed back. So I had no money, no severance pay, nothing like that. I had a child in the house. And I just thought, I'm done with the games industry. That's it. And so I kept in touch with very few people after that. I set up my own publishing company called Predator, and I launched a movie magazine called DVD Monthly deliberately, so I wouldn't have to have anything to do with games anymore. Okay, so I guess Richard Secular's not on your call list, but before we get into the golden joystick, obviously you arrived at Hewland International. What did you find there in Canary Wharf at the time? Was there a format, or was it literally just a blank piece of paper on a desk and a pen?
Or at Hewland, you mean?
Yeah.
We had no idea. We walked in. A couple of guys there were experienced. Obviously, Adam Wood and Cameron McAllister were both working in television. Adam Wood, the producer, Cameron McAllister, the director. But both were very young, so they weren't super experienced. There's a guy called Chris Kelly there who did a lot of booking for the celebrities and the kids and everything. He was making his living in television, if you like, but he was pretty young as well. And then there was myself and Steve Carsey, and we were the games experts. And none of us had a clue what to do. I mean, Adam and Cameron, I'm sure, had thrashed out a few things as to how they thought things could go, but they had absolutely no game experience. So me and Steve had to bring them up to speed, if you like, on games, software companies, that kind of thing. What's good, what's bad. But the problem we had as well is that what's a good game doesn't necessarily make a good game challenge. There's so many great games that you can't make a 2-minute challenge out of. Plus, as well, if you're filming a TV show, some of the good areas of games that would make a good challenge, you've spent an hour and a half, 2 hours getting to that area of the game to do that one bit of the game. You can't, if the contestant gets it wrong, or if the game machine crashes, you can't go back and spend another 2.5 hours playing through there again, because a lot of games back then didn't have the multiple save points that they have in games now. So
that's an interesting take.
Yeah. So nobody had ever had to look at games like we had to look at video games. We had to look at them as a completely different entity. We weren't looking at them like we were reviewing them or putting them in a magazine like we were going to spend the evening playing them. We were looking at them as to whether or not they could make a viable games challenge on a television show, and whether or not we could access them quickly whenever we needed to.
I've always liked the games that you chose. One that sticks out to me in my childlike brain. A friend of mine who actually got to go to the recording of the first series, and he was like a deity at my school. Terry Blow, I've mentioned him on here before. He actually went down and he was telling us about this show that none of us had even heard of called Gamesmaster. Like, yeah, whatever. Then it was on Channel 4 and it's like, did you see me in the crowd? Like, no. But, I think you had Eric Bristow on, and he was playing. Bristow, was it Heimdall?
Heimdall, yeah. It was the bonus round in Heimdall.
That's it. And
it wasn't the actual. This is a classic example. It wasn't the actual game, because the game wouldn't have been suitable.
No.
But the bonus round was perfect, where you were throwing axes to chop off the girls' braids.
That's it. Yeah. I always remember that, because at the time, graphically, that sequence looked amazing. It looked like a Don Bluth cartoon or something like that. It looked fantastic. He hit her in the head several more times than I think is necessary, but there you go. Didn't he?
It was very difficult. I don't know if you ever played that, but at first your hand is very steady, and then the longer you play it, the hand starts wobbling a lot, so it's really difficult to make the shots. So
I think this is based on the Viking level of intoxication, I presume.
I would imagine so. Yeah, but it was a good game. Yeah, Eric was one of those guests that when he arrived, we were all in awe of him. Because when you look back at that first season of Gamesmaster, it's very British.
It is.
There's the Aussie. There's the Aussie guys. I think it was Pat Cash. I think he was on it. He's obviously an Aussie, and there was guy from Neighbours, Ashley somebody or other, and apart from that, I think they're all British guests, because obviously back then it was low budget. It was the first season. We couldn't go large. Also, you can't be sure who wants to come on the show or not. Because nobody knows what it is.
It felt to viewers, it felt so fresh and new, and it was like
there's like a lot of Channel 4 TV back then. I mean, I'm a bit younger than you, but I always look back at those shows they were putting out. They were quite edgy and definitely different to what was on the other three channels.
It was on at that sort of tea time slot, but it was sort of quite happily straddling the sort of street of, this is casual gaming here. This is people that are slightly into it, kids maybe, but it will also had a suitability that a grown-up or a parent could watch at the same time and probably still extract something out of it different to the child, which I've gone back and watched episodes of it, and I've gone back and watched episodes of Bad Influence, etc. And I think both of those shows have aged really well. Yours, Gamesmaster, was far more sort of a fun format, with the challenges and all that sort of stuff. But Yeah, if we may, then, first question, which I think you've answered. Retro Gamer Thomas messaged in. He says, fantastic to have the legend that is Dave on the show, and I welcome him to the UC family. Well, we went one step further than that, Retro Gamer Thomas. We knighted him. I'd like to ask Dave, how did you get involved in Gamesmaster, which I think we've done? Was it something you had to audition for, or were you well-known enough in gaming? Did they approach you? Also, cheeky extra question, which I think we answered in the pre-show. Are you still a big gamer today? If so, what's your favourite modern or retro? So let's just unpick that very quickly, Dave, if we may. Did you have to audition?
Audition for what, to be on screen?
Yeah. Or was that just you were already so deeply entrenched at that point?
Well, no, the thing with the on-screen was when we were doing a lot of the interviews for the auditions for the presenters, not just for the main presenter, for Dominic, but also for the co-commentators and for the Gamesmaster himself. We had to, we got people to come into the church, and we would set up like a games challenge, and I would stand beside them and do a commentary while they would do the main presenting over the top of it to see who it worked with. And the more I did that with them, the more I realized that actually I wanted to be on the other side of the camera. And I was that kind of guy as a young guy. And I still am to a degree. I don't believe that there's anything that's not possible. You know, I don't believe that you should never ask for something if you want it bad enough. You know, there's no such thing as a closed door. There's only ever a need to find another way in. And so I was there, and we were interviewing all these people and auditioning them. And I just said to the camera, and I said, I'd like to be on the other side of the camera. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, you know, I'd like to be in front of the camera. I'd like to do some presenting. You know, is there any chance that I could be considered for that side of the job as well, while I was still doing the other job? And he said, well, yeah, sure, of course. So they did a little bit of screen testing for me. And that's how I got on camera, just purely because I was a games expert and a journalist that had been writing before. And of course, part of the original Gamesmaster format was we were using journalists, and we were trying to use as many games experts. Just that sort of died off as the show got older. But in the early days, everyone on that show was a games expert pretty much. So
they were games experts with their associated magazine like Mean Machines or whatever. You were just Gamesmaster's games expert, because at the time you weren't associated to a magazine, so you were to the viewer, to me anyway, you were like, you had that little bit of extra sauce.
Yeah, if you like, I became one of the first pro gamers, really. You know, in that I wasn't just a reviewer for a magazine, whatever. I was earning my money from being a gamer. I was a professional gamer, you know, which was unusual. You know, I was known for being, you know, a great gamer. And of course, I told everybody I was a great gamer, which helped. And especially when you're on telly.
You know, fake it till you make it, though. That's what I say.
Absolutely right.
We've got some more Gamesmaster questions, if we may be so bold. We'll do them in this order. Gaz Loves Games meshes into the show. He said, no way, that's so cool. My video last week featured his Gamesmaster Christmas Challenge. It went wrong. We're never going to mention that here. I'd have to ask, did he ever pick up a copy of Mario 64 and play it when it released? Or was the challenge bad enough that you just didn't bother with Mario 64? He calls you a legend, the Gaz Loves Games, and he asks to pass on his regards.
Oh, thank you very much for that. And he is, of course, right.
Absolutely brilliant.
But no, Mario 64, no, never played it, never wanted to play it. Didn't want to play it on the day, didn't want to play it after the day. And
there's a scoop.
People for years have tried to pressure me into playing it. I'm not going to play a game I don't want to play. You know, it's just not my kind of game. I don't like platformers, if I'm honest, which is why I generally don't like Nintendo, because some of the greatest games have been platformers, and I don't like them. I'm suspicious of any format where the major characters tend to have a head that's way too big for their bodies.
That's me growing up, Dave. Sadly, I've finally grown into my head. But here's another question then, if we may. Brett himself says, what a get? I guess it believes in reference to your good self. So,
blimey.
Our audience is tapped into the idea of you being a gaming god. They weren't wrong.
Unless it was an autocorrector and he put "get" in.
Could be. Well, do you know what? Let's run with the compliment.
I'll take Get.
Yeah. Would be interested to know his thoughts on Channel 4 starting up a new Gamesmaster. Obviously, the way we found gaming content has changed drastically in the last 20 years. Is their proposed celebrity tournament a good idea?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic idea. I mean, and a lot of people are hating on it. A lot of purists who love the show. I get why they're upset and so forth. But the show as it was is never going to come back. It can't do. Everyone's too old, and it just wouldn't work like it. You'd have to. The thing with Gamesmaster was, it was almost like a perfect storm. The people that came together making that show, the chemistry between them was so perfect. They produced something unique at a time when what we were producing had never been produced before. So everything about it was original. Now, if you tried to recreate it, you couldn't, because it wouldn't be original anymore. So you'd have to get people who were so creatively original that they came up with something completely new. Chances of that are not really very likely. But television needs a video game show. It needs a show because, video gaming now, when we did Gamesmaster, it was very underground. Kids were still in the bedroom playing their games.
Yeah.
Parents didn't understand it. Now, part of the problem we came up against a lot was the fact that the commissioning editors for the channels didn't know where to pitch a video game show because they didn't know where the advertising was coming from. Television is all about money. It's all about advertising. So who was going to sponsor the show? Who's going to advertise in the breaks? Who do you pitch it to? What's the demographic? A bunch of kids. That's how they saw it. Kids got no disposable income. Kids have got no control over the money. So you couldn't sell the advertising on it. So now, however, the video games industry is as big as the film industry. It's as big as the movie industry financially. And the adopters, the people that are playing the games, are the people with the disposable income. They're all grown up. They've got lots of money in their pockets. So it is so viable now to have a video game show. Why do we need so many cooking and gardening shows? And we don't have any video game shows, And everybody says, because it's all on the internet, it's all on YouTube. Yeah, that's damaged. That's damaged it. That's hurt it. But there's nothing like television. I mean, it's like pointing your camera at yourself and making your own show is not the same as going into a professional studio and having a bunch of professional people making a show with you there. It just isn't. It's the difference between, taking a selfie on your phone and being an actual model with a real photographer. It's worlds apart. And we, as a games industry, we deserve to have TV shows that we can watch about our subject, that really go into it. And if to start that again, we have to have a celebrity-based show, then make it with Gamesmaster, because the format with Gamesmaster will be lovely, to have the Gamesmaster and a presenter and a lot of celebrities, as long as we don't have a Go 8-bit type affair, where it's just basically jobs for the boys for B-list stand-up comedians, then, it should be great. And I think we really do need it. And I think people should get behind it.
I hope it does avoid the jobs for the boys, because I think you're right. There could be the penchant to put on, we're bringing back Gamesmaster. Let's wind up a load of these washed up celebrities that may or may not remember
Let's get the cast of 9 out of 10 Cats or something, or Taskmaster or something. Let's give them a gig on Gamesmaster now, But make it more varied, make it more edgy, make it more different. Yeah, keep a little bit of the Gamesmaster flavor. Make it a bit sexist if you want. Throw some people in that are going to kind of just get the pot boiling a little bit.
Yeah.
But if it takes celebrities to get on telly, do it.
I just wanted to ask Dave, in today's world, do you think edgy and, like you say, a bit racy, sexist, sort of, is that going to go down? Do you think that will go down? Because I feel like everybody's too easily offended now, which is why I really, really like the way you talked about. I own a Nintendo Switch, but I found it funny. I find that funny. There's that missing. If you'd have said that to a lot of people nowadays, they'd just go, "You can't say that to me. That offends me." It's just what's going on?
That a guy in prison is talking about going down. I find that alarming.
The guests love the law.
He does. He does love the law. But yeah, to round it up.
Hate it. I can only go from my own reference point. The people in TV they'll sanitize it and they'll make it glitzy or whatever.
Okay.
And,
Yeah.
I think whatever, as long as they by edgy and sexist, I mean, get some guests on that are just a little bit out of left field. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
absolutely. For a good mix together. I mean, classic example of that, The Masked Singer. Love The Masked Singer. I should hate The Masked Singer. It should be everything I hate about television. But I became so addicted to it. But part of the magic of that show was the guests they got on it was so good. You just didn't expect those people to take those hats off and be those people. They went a little bit beyond just getting the normal, safe reality stars. I mean, avoid reality stars like the plague. I mean, those people aren't celebrities. Do you know what I mean? It's not. It's as much a celebrity as Instagram makes a celebrity. Instagram doesn't make celebrities. It just makes something you've seen a lot. It's like saying a daisy is a celebrity because you see daisies everywhere. It doesn't make them a celebrity.
I've noticed that these celebrities, they crawl up with the Instagram accounts, then they get on Love Island or Celebs Go Dating. Yeah. Then that ratifies them in the eyes of the television world as a celebrity. But when you unpick their career, it's like you've done nothing.
No, what it is unfortunately, it's like the difference between the Beatles and Take That. Because the Beatles, if you took the Beatles and you stuck them in a room with no one else and you told them to make music, they'd make some bloody good music. You put Take That in a room with nobody else, told them to make some music, they'd struggle because only Gary Barlow can play an instrument, or at the time he could. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's the same with celebrity. The bank of celebrities we've got now is they're kind of famous for not really doing anything. So when they're stripped bare and they're put in a scenario where real celebrities are put out there and they've got some background, they've got a little bit of something to fall back on. The reality show celebrities, they've got nothing to fall back on except for the fact they take a nice selfy. Yeah. And at the end of the day, that gets monotonous, that gets boring, and so you end up with this vacuous world. I read a book by Robbie Williams a little while ago, and he said he became, I can't remember it exactly, so don't quote me, but he said something about he became very suspicious of celebrity parties because he started going to parties and he didn't know any of the celebrities, and he said I grew up in an era where celebrities were famous for being good at something. Mm-hmm. He said, but I was going to parties where people were famous and I didn't know why they were famous. And I just thought, it's like Big Brother, isn't it? You watch Big Brother and things like that now. And the celebrity Big Brother, they go in there and celebrities have to introduce themselves to each other.
Yes.
How are you a celebrity if you have to introduce yourself to another celebrity?
It's true.
Yeah.
It's so true.
It's horrific. And I Love Island, I mean, basically a year or so ago, my daughter said she wanted to watch it because they hadn't watched it and it was all over, always. She said, we want to watch it this year because we want to understand what's going on the social network. And so, okay, so we watched it. And like all those shows, they're very well made. You don't think you're going to get addicted to them, but you do. You start caring why Kevin is sneaking behind Adriana's back when she's so lovely, and Chrysanthemum isn't, and all this. But and that's good. You get into it a little bit, but you get so sick of looking at young girls' asses. And who'd have thought you'd get sick of that? These girls in bikinis, which are nothing more than dental floss, but actually you get sick of all those asses. It's almost like it makes sexy unsexy. It's very weird. Very weird. And these people,
I never thought this was possible, but you can have too much of a good thing.
You can do. I went to Paris a few years ago and I went to the Moulin Rouge, and I thought that was going to be just like burlesque, big production numbers, big fancy feather boas and things. Me and the wife went together. I didn't go by myself, don't worry, I'm not that sad. And it was like 40 odd women on stage, completely topless, nearly all the time. It was just like complete boob overload. You just became boob blind. Just became so sick of looking at boobs. What the hell? I never would have thought it possible. Never would have thought it possible. But yeah, celebrities, it's just, to be honest with you, occasionally you get a good one come through. Occasionally you get a reality star come through who has got, can take it to the next level. I mean, someone like Ryan. Rylan or whatever, came through trying to be a singer on Britain's Got Talent or whatever, but turned out to be a really good presenter, and he is a good presenter. I mean, he's not everybody's cup of tea, but he does a bloody good job. And occasionally they come through, but largely they don't bring a lot to the table other than the fact that they look good. That wouldn't make for an interesting show on Gamesmaster. If I had to watch a bunch of people like that,
Yeah.
I would not be interested. But if I had to watch a bunch of people who I knew from doing something in some other arena, especially if they had a bit of edge about them, or a bit of controversy about them, to see them facing each other would be great. I mean, on Gamesmaster, we had a challenge once where Vinnie Jones played John Barnes on FIFA.
Yeah.
Wonderful, because there was edge there, because they'd both played each other in an FA Cup a few years before, where Wimbledon controversially beat Liverpool. And it was great to put them on the video game then. And there's a subtext. If you're clever, you can get a subtext in there. But with reality stars, where's the subtext? There isn't, It's just so. But if they pick the right guests, yes, I think Gamesmaster, the new Gamesmaster, I think get behind it, because I'd just like to see it back on the telly. I mean, who wouldn't? Why not? I mean, the alternative is what? All the stuff that's coming out.
The alternative, sadly, Dave, is the Unofficial Controller podcast.
Yeah. And of course, they need a commentator, because, you've got to explain these games to people that don't really understand games anymore. So, I'm not doing anything on a Saturday night.
Well, if I'm travelling down, so I'll pick you up in the car if you want. We could do a carpool. Question from one of our loyal listeners, Harvey Retro.
Yeah.
He's also been a guest on the show. He's a self-confessed film buff. Okay. And they've got a channel called Enigmatic Productions where they review horror movies. They're in the industry themselves, so their insight is wonderful. But here's what he's got to say. He says, "What a great guest! ! I saw Dave as the Axl Rose of the game industry back in the day, watching Gamesmaster.
Welcome to the jungle!
I'd like to ask, what was the best and worst thing about working on Gamesmaster? Looking forward to hearing the show. Smiling with teeth emoji."
Oh, the best thing. Best and worst thing. I'm going to regret it, aren't I? Because I'm going to say something and then I'm going to think about something else. It's one of those things, isn't it? One of those things.
Well, we can leave it open. If someone else comes up after this, you can.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's have a think. Best thing about working on Gamesmaster, which was working on Gamesmaster. I liked being on telly. I liked being on the other side of the screen. I liked being recognised by the kids. I liked the buzz. I liked walking in on Jet when she was getting into the Games Mistress outfit. I liked being sent lots of free stuff by software companies.
Let's pause. Let's just pause and rewind to Diane Yuledale. Tell me, how is Diane? Is that someone you might still speak to, or is that a line run under your life as well?
Yeah, no, all gone. They've all gone. Yeah, no, Diane. She was Jet. She became the Games Mistress on Games World. We had her on season 3 of Gamesmaster, the Dexter Fletcher season, and she was on as a guest, and she was in our green room, which is where the guests will wait before they go down to do their filming. And no one had told me that she was getting changed in the green room. And so I didn't know. I just came back to my whatever.
No one said anything, Diane.
And I burst into the green room, and there was talcum powder everywhere, like a big cloud of talcum powder in the room. And then I suddenly realized that was because she had talcum powdered herself all over to get inside her latex suit. So that was apparently how you do it. Yeah. So it took me 10, 15 seconds to realize and leave the room. So that was a good moment. No, I just liked being on Gamesmaster. I liked doing it. It was because having been a show that we created from nothing, it always felt special to be on there.
Yeah.
And the worst thing about being on Gamesmaster probably was the decline in my relationship with Dominic Diamond. Because in the early days we got on great, but in the later days, some days filming was I'd go up there and it'd be very stressful, because
what drove that wedge? Because like you say at the start, it just felt beautiful.
Still don't know. In the early days, we used to go out and have curry and drink, and it was great. And then all of a sudden, around about season 2, it started getting sour. Season 3, he went off to do another TV show, and then they asked me to come in and present the whole second half of the show with Dexter when it got moved to the dungeons.
Yeah.
And then by the time he came back for season 4, we barely said any words to each other off screen. On screen, fine. I think on screen on season 4, he was making faces behind my back when I was talking to the camera and silly things like that had started. And I had no idea why. And to this day, we've never spoken about it.
How strange. On that note, seeing as you brought it up, he's part of the lore of the show, believe it or not. Dexter Fletcher. How did he compare and contrast, and do you think he got a bit of a short straw?
Oh, Dexter got the shortest straw in television history, in my opinion, because what people don't take into account with Dexter is that Dominic left the show. Dominic left the show because he got an offer of another show. He went and did a school-time quiz show. And I'm not sure Dominic was ever completely into video games. He wanted to be a TV star. So Dexter was brought in as the new presenter, but Dexter had never presented before. He's not a presenter. He's an actor. He's a director now, but he was an actor then. He was off Press Gang and the Rachel Papers and things like that. So he needed some help because presenting and acting are two very different things. At that time, what the casual viewer doesn't realize is that from the start, from our team of 5, when we first created the show, there was Adam and Cameron as director and producer, and they directed and produced the first season. They directed and produced the second season. And, to an extent, they helped develop Dominic as a presenter and the face of the show. Then for season 3, they both left. They both went off and did other things. So you had Dexter coming into a hostile environment because the fans weren't happy that Dominic wasn't doing it anymore. He'd never presented before. And you had 2 completely new guys as director and producer who openly admit, even now, that they didn't get on at the time. So they were conflicted, and they were often at cross purposes over our headphones whilst we were talking or trying to talk or waiting to produce. And Dexter, if you can almost see it as the season goes on, he's almost overcompensating for what's going on behind the scenes. He's being a bit too shouty and loud and everything, but he's just trying to hold the whole thing together. And what people forget as well is that midway through that season, we were shooting in Oxford Prison, and the prison got picked back up by the government. So it was we got moved. So we had to move the whole set halfway through the show as well, which we took it from Oxford then to London into the dungeons, and then we changed the whole format into the game challenge for the normal game show. So Dexter was really given, getting the shitty end of the stick most of the time, and people tend not to understand that or choose not to understand it because they'd rather think that Dominic came back in season 4 and saved the whole thing and the whole thing was wonderful again. Whereas Dexter really, he did his best with what he could.
Like you say, at the time he was a reasonably well-known TV personality for acting. Press Gang is the show that you call out, and absolutely. I think he was even in Bugsy Malone, wasn't he? If memory serves.
He was in Bugsy Malone,
and he wasn't a presenter, and they are 2 very different skills. And for the most part, the show wasn't terrible. It was just different. But that's always going to happen when you get a change, because Dominic had a very interesting, irreverent style of humour, whereas Dexter was not that kind of cat at all, was he?
No, he wasn't. And there was also the show itself being a brand new show, and like I say, being like nothing else, like no one had ever done the show on this subject matter before. Dominic was so rubber stamped on it as well that it was always going to be hard for an audience to take to a new presenter. So he did have a really hard job, but he did the best he could, Dexter, and I think he did a good job. And another popular myth with the show is if you look at the viewing figures for the seasons, it's not a badly viewed season. People like to think that season died, and then but it didn't. It actually did really well that season. It's a bit like Alien 3. There's a lot of people that actually quite like it. It did all right.
I quite like Alien. I like PS3s, PSPs, and Alien 3. Mark me up as a weirdo. Throw me in the cave.
I like Alien 3. I like Godfather 3 as well. You're not supposed to like that one either. Hang on just a second. You okay? Yeah. Okay.
Well, before we leave the gravitational pull of Gamesmaster, I want to just get the inside track on the golden joystick. And in my mind, you and Richard the Secular, the Quickjoy representative, you opened up the door like an old door in this is nothing like it was, Dave, but forgive me this dalliance. The doors open up and there's a load of old gaming peripherals, and then at the end of the room in a glass box is a golden joystick. And at that point, I'm guessing you knew you had to have it. What's the real story?
That's exactly what happened, actually. It was just like that. There was a staircase as well, actually.
What's it?
Yeah, all the old sticks and pads were all on the side of the stairs as we walked up, and then at the top there was the golden joystick. Now, what actually happened was, like I say, we didn't know what we were doing. We'd never done a TV show like this before. So, in order to try and make myself useful in the early days, I started phoning around all the software companies and speaking to my contacts and telling them what we were doing. We're making a TV show about video games, and arranging prizes, because obviously, we're having challenges. We had to have prizes. So I was arranging arcade machines, holidays, things like that. Good prizes. And I took them to Jane Hewland, who owned the company, and Adam and Cameron, and they looked into it. It's like, no, Channel 4 had a value on what you could give away as prizes, because it was classed as a children's show. You could only give away so much in monetary value in the prizes. You couldn't have really good, really big, expensive prizes. So that put the kibosh on that. So we decided we had to come up with something. We had to come up with an award that was a reward. We had to come up with something that was worth having. Obviously, the analogy that came into our head was like the Blue Peter badge or the Cracker Jack pencil. Something like that. That was largely valueless, except for the person who had it. And I was speaking to Richard Secular because I was sorting out joysticks and peripherals for the show. And I was telling him about our problem. And he said, well, we have a golden joystick. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, for retailers who perform very well for us, at the end of the year, we have awards, and we give them a golden joystick as a reward to say thank you for selling so many units. I've got 19 of these left in the warehouse. We're not doing it anymore. Would you be interested in them? I'm like, oh my God, send one to me. So he sent one to me. It was perfect. It was in the presentation perspex box.
Well, that's how it came, Dave.
Absolutely came like that. Golden joystick. I took it through to Adam and Jay, and I said, golden joystick. This could be our reward. This is our award. This is what we give the kids. And they loved it. So Richard sent us all 19 of the golden joysticks. And so the first 19 golden joysticks, all the sticks that were on the first show, basically all came from that source. After that, then we had to find somebody to manufacture them going forward. but the first ones were ready made, sat in a warehouse waiting for us. Just that it was just like it was meant to be. It was fate.
I love that. And again, like I say, we have a tradition of guests being very humble, but I think that the idea of your involvement in Gamesmaster has been clouded. And for me, hearing you talk about this and how it all began and choosing the joystick and all that sort of stuff, I think really, hopefully, brings to the surface more of what your actual involvement was, and it doesn't all just boil down to that challenge, which I think is a terrible line drawn under what was an amazing time on TV, presumably, and the involvement in really a great show that's still remembered fondly in people's minds. Hopefully we've done that for them, but it didn't just stop there, did it? Because one of my favourite gaming magazines growing up was a magazine called Play, which I believe was your baby.
Yes, it was.
There was Power Station, X-Gen Station, and Mega Power. Is there any others that we've missed?
That I've done. Sega Pro, we did X-Gen, didn't we?
Yeah.
Total PlayStation, Total N64. You got me thinking now. I took over UPC. There was a Dreamcast magazine. There was PlayStation Solutions. Did we do that? We did Ultimate Solutions.
Yeah, that was the magazine back in the day, wasn't it?
Mega Power. Yeah, no, there's been so many. I've done so many. I've put so many magazines together and written for so many magazines.
Did that happen?
Always been an honour.
It's hard to unpick your career, especially in the early part, because it seems to be like this just congealed ball of creativity that kind of spills out. Were you doing this at the same time as filming the show? Was this like your fill-in outside of time, or was it happening simultaneously?
All of it. All of it was, well, I was working for Paragon. Paragon was where I went to after Hewland. After season 1, I left Hewland after Gamesmaster. Jane thought I should stay in television, but I wanted to go back to writing. So I joined Paragon, and they were a new publishing company who had just launched Sega Pro. So I went and worked for them. I worked for them for 5 years or so. And then while I was working for them and launching magazines with them and running magazines with them, I was also filming Gamesmaster. I was also filming Games World. I was also making appearances on things like The Net on BBC Two and things like that. And I was also traveling all over the country, opening shops and doing game challenges and taking part in live appearances all over the country. So generally my week would be, I'd be working on the magazines, all of which were run to tight deadlines, very tight deadlines. And sometimes that would mean we wouldn't go home at night. We'd work through the night and sleep at our desks and things like that. And then on the Friday or something, I would travel up to London and maybe then do Gamesmaster for 3-4 days. I'm not sure where I stayed. I stayed wherever I could. They didn't provide accommodation, so you had to find someone's floor to bunk on while you were doing it. And then I'd come back, and then maybe then I'd do some more on my magazine, and then maybe the next week I'd be off to Leeds to do a games challenge, or I'd be doing a live radio broadcast to make some money for charity, or sometimes I'd like do a challenge in a supermarket or something like that. I was always on the go. I was always somewhere doing something. I was doing all these things at the same time. It would have been very tiring if it wasn't for the fact that I was young and fit. So, it's you just pack it all in. You don't want to get bored when you're young, do you?
Who was the strangest celebrity you opened a store with? Because I know a lot of the time you'd be doing it with like Joe Guest or Louise Nerdin or someone like that. Who was the strangest?
Strangest? That's a good question. Wolf the Gladiator wouldn't talk to us. I remember that. He was off doing something. Richard Branson was great. He used to abseil down the front of his own building, so that was good. I'm trying to think of someone strange. I can't think of anybody strange, really. Oh God, I wish I could now.
Well, you're done with this industry. As you say, you drew a line, you moved on, you deleted them all out of your phone. New phone, new disc.
Everybody I worked with generally were nice. I mean, one of my favourite ones was at Old Trafford, the Daily Mirror newspaper. They flew me up to Old Trafford, up to Manchester, to go and see the Manchester United team training at the Cliff, which used to be their training ground before they had Carrington. And that was a surreal experience because I was sat there watching them train in the morning. And it literally was, back in those days, it was jumpers for goalposts, and there was like, you had like Peter Schmeichel, Ryan Giggs, Eric Cantona, Brian Robson, and David Beckham taking on Paul Scholes, Rio Ferdinand, Peter Schmeichel, and Mark Hughes. You had all these superstars out there just playing five-a-side against each other. It was surreal. So anyway, after that finished, they brought me back to Old Trafford itself, took me in the stadium, and sat me in this room. And I got bored, so I walked around, and I sat in another room, and then realised I was in Alex Ferguson's office. So I quickly got out of there, and the press man come and got me, took me down. And I didn't know which Man United players I was doing the photo shoot with. It was a photo shoot for the Daily Mirror. I didn't know which United players I was doing. And in my head, I'm thinking, I want Cantona, Beckham or Giggs. In my head, I was thinking which players I wanted. They brought me the Neville brothers. Neville. And I had to pretend not to be disappointed. Do you know what I mean? Because I was professional, I was doing a job. And the reason was, at the time, they'd both broken into the England team. And the Daily Mirror were going with the story, as well as a lot of the press, that this was the first time since 1966 we'd had two brothers playing in defence for England. So it was a good omen for us, for the England team going forward. Yeah. So I had the Neville brothers, I had Phil and Gary, and I was a little bit underwhelmed, to be fair. But they were really nice. They were really professional, really good guys. But yeah, that was a bit of a strange one. And I had a surreal moment outside the ground, because I came outside the ground afterwards, and I'm waiting for my car to come and pick me up. And outside of Old Trafford, I don't know if it's like it now, outside of Old Trafford, there was always a huge group of people waiting to catch any of the players as they came out. Autographs, they got shirts to sign and all this sort of thing. And I came out the front of Old Trafford with my bandana on and that still. And a couple of the younger kids in the crowd waiting recognized me and asked for my autograph. And it triggered the whole crowd. All these autograph hunters came over and surrounded me for autographs. And I don't think 90% of them even knew who I was. It's like somebody had come out of Old Trafford and somebody recognized him and got an autograph. So everyone was going to get an autograph. And security came out and had to move us off the road because we were blocking the road. And I had this little surreal moment of just imagining what it must be like to be a Manchester United star.
Wow.
Stood outside Old Trafford signing autographs. It didn't matter that half of them wouldn't even have known who I was. Didn't matter at all.
I think when the genie's out of the bottle like that and someone sees someone getting something, they all think they want it. They'll work out later whose signature it is. But
no one wants to miss out. Somebody somewhere's got a Man United shirt with my autograph on it.
Perfect. That to me is worth its weight in gold.
Yeah.
Tell me, after the Mini, what vehicle were you cruising up and down the UK in after the Mini was unceremoniously bumped off?
The Mini. I had the Mini for years. And then I I remember trading the Mini in, and I actually had to roll it down a hill and leave it parked because it wouldn't make it to the dealership. I didn't tell the guy. And I part exchanged it for an MG, and I had a blue MG for years.
Oh,
I love sports cars. I love British sports cars.
The classic MG.
MG Midget.
Mm.
Yeah, little MG Midget. I had a roll frame on it so I could have the roof down all the time without worrying about my head being knocked off if I crashed. So I used to crash a lot. So that was my car for years and years. And then when I joined THQ, they bought me one of the first 7 Hyundai coupes that came in the country. So I was driving around in that for a while. So that was a really nice car. That was my first time I'd ever driven a car off the forecourt, if you like. It was beautiful.
Yeah. Nice. Question about your writing, if possible. A couple of questions. C. Pliskin, he's a regular Irish listener. He says, your podcasts bring all the guests to the yard, don't they, George? Smiling with sweat on his face emoji. I don't know what that's all about. I'm admittedly trying to get that song out of my head now, smiling with tears emoji. Another pretty cool invite you have on the show. However, if I may ask Mr. Perry, from one article writer to another, he likes to think himself, it reminds me of that Spider-Man meme. I think myself a little bit of an article writer myself. But C. Pliskin thinks himself a bit of an article writer, Dave, if you may be so bold. How would you lay out an article for, say, a game review? I'm doing a personal article series on Ratchet & Clank franchise, and I have the format structured as this. My history with the title, pre-production, production, story, including spoilers, presentation, gameplay, the final conclusion, with some images and videos included in between. How does it sound? And if you were to write a personal look back on a series, how would you do it? Kind regards, thumbs up emoji. Let me break that one down into its component parts for you. He thinks himself a games article writer. You know, fair play to the old boy. The amount of stuff he writes into us on a weekly basis, I tell you what, Dave, he could fill some space. How would you lay out an article for a game review?
There's no formula to it. I mean, and there shouldn't be a formula to it. You know, classic writing is always the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, and why. Who, what, where, when, why. Yeah. You get all of those things into any article, particularly a news story. But I always try and find an angle straight away. Always try and find an angle, something funny to draw the reader in, some kind of angle, some way they haven't thought about it before to get their attention.
That is one thing I wanted to touch on, if I may. Back in the day of the magazines, when magazines were God, before the internet existed, where the only place you could go to was a collected sheets of paper, clad with a game on the front of it, and you would go and you would hoover up all of the information in there. Reviews then, I've got a load of old magazines that I still read. Reviews then, to your point, were so much more interesting. It would start with a paragraph side ramble, and then that would link into the game somehow. You said you wrote an article recently for a retro gaming magazine. Do you feel like that's changed?
Changed in the world today?
Yeah.
I don't. I think it's hard. I think that once again, reviewers today, it's kind of like bands today. I mean, it's kind of all been done. There's been so many games reviews, and they've been done so well over the years. So many of the guys who used to do them are revered, like myself, Jazza Rignall, Stuart Campbell, Gary Penn, people like that. Great writers who have written great reviews. It's hard to top these guys, and there's the danger of when something's been done so often, you without trying to copy it, you start copying, because it's like I would say with music today. When we were younger, in the 80s, every band used to try and make its own sound. If you heard a Duran Duran record, you knew it was Duran Duran instantly.
Yeah.
If you heard a Culture Club record, you knew it was Culture Club. Adam and the Ants, you instantly knew. The Police, something about it. They had a sound, the tone, the beat, something about it. You instantly knew who they were without ever being told who it was. Even before the singer sung, you could tell. Now, you feel with music, people try and fit in a genre. Oh, we're death metal. Oh, we're an indie band. Oh, we're this band. We're R&B. We're and they try and fit into these various little windows because it makes them feel accepted. It makes them feel like, oh, we're doing this right because we are this and we're ticking every box to be in this. So we're a proper band. And I'm thinking with reviewers, there's an element of that now as well, because instead of trying to stand out and have their own unique thing, they're trying to do what seems like a professional review because it's like all the other professional reviews that were written years ago as well. And so everything starts to get a little bit Me Too. And I think reviewing now, I admit I don't read a lot of the magazines anymore, because it's not my gig anymore. I'm not into that anymore. But what I have seen, I couldn't name a reviewer for you. There's nobody really exciting. Whereas in my day, you used to look forward to certain people's reviews because they brought their own flavor and their own style or their own edginess.
Those that have done well in the website era of gaming news and reviews, those that have done actually well normally branch off and become a legend in their own lunch hour, so to speak. They go off and have their own YouTube channel, or they go off and start off their own podcast or whatever. Yeah,
a lot of them now are like YouTube, like people have their favorite YouTube reviewer of a video game, or like someone who will report on a E3 or something like that that's been on.
I think it's about, because of the lack of magazines and the websites are a bit up and down, because I'm sure magazines were getting paid off back in the day if a dodgy game came out, but there was a sweetener of XYZ in the game box, then happy days. But people have lost a little bit of trust in websites these days, and the word of a reviewer seems to carry way less weight than maybe your word would have. If you'd have said this game is great back in the day, people would have just gone, brilliant, slap it down, I'll get that for the Amiga, the ST, or whatever, I'm having it. Whereas now, you've kind of got to find a voice you trust, either on YouTube or
the problem is, and I don't want to run anyone down, but the problem is it's quality control. Back in my day, just in the process, you wrote your review, that was then sub-edited. It then went to the editor who read it through, and then it went out, out into the world, and you got reaction back from the world. So you had those processes to go through, which you don't have to do now. Plus, say you had a magazine. When I launched Games World magazine, I had 3 writers with me, and I got to handpick those 3 writers for that magazine. Some magazines I wrote only had 1 or 2 writers with me, but Games World I had 3. Now, you imagine all the hundreds and hundreds of people that wanted to be a reviewer and who applied to us to be a reviewer on the magazines. I was able to find the top 3. And with Games World, I chose from inside the industry, but often we would always be taking apprentices on and teaching them how to write. So when everyone wrote to you and wanted to work on your magazines, you would you'd pick the best of the best, and you bring them through. And if they didn't quite make it, they'd go by the wayside. You pick someone else in. So you're always sorting the wheat out from the chaff, if you like. Now, anybody who wants to be a games reviewer, just have a website, have a blog, have a YouTube channel, point a camera at yourself, do it on Instagram, do it on Twitch, do whatever. There's nobody's saying no anymore. So everybody's doing it. So what you get is you just get a massive watered down end product, which means that the quality by default is dropping. Like you say, when you find someone you really trust, great, but you've got to go through a lot of rubbish to get there. And a lot of people just, they never find that person. They just think it's all at that grey level, Is it like The Hangover 2, where he describes the dentist as boiled rice? It's like that. It's a choy or something. There's a lot of that out there. You know what I mean? It's just and you don't feel everything is about just, it's fast food, isn't it? It's fast food.
Sadly,
you're just churning it and churning it and churning
Consume
it.
and then move on to the next one.
Yeah, because nothing's got a window. We would have it would be a news story, and then the PRs would send us something to do a preview with, and we got there and we'd get a playable preview, and then we'd get a review. And everything had a window, and it was carefully orchestrated, and you got it out, and the excitement built up, and the information was, first you've got that news information, then you got that preview information, then you got the review information. You knew where you were. Now, it's anytime anybody's got anything, it's just on the internet and forgotten about. There's no.
Yeah.
And then you move on to the next game, and it's like, well, what about that game? It's not really had its day in court yet. It's everything is just ka-ching, 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 ka-ching. And when everything's moving that fast and that superficially, quality is going to suffer.
I think we've become. I've had this thought several times. I lament the physical magazine, and I lament a good website that does a good review, and they kind of, as you say, they're starting to disappear, and this sort of fast food, fast news things coming through. But I often find myself checking video games news sites on a daily, hourly basis, and obviously nothing's changed, but the magazine creators can see this need coming in. They're like, oh, we need something to lob it up, and you'll rip it apart like animals. And obviously with the show and everything, I try and keep abreast of the news in case something big drops. You're always living in that hope, aren't you? But even as gamers, you're living in the hope that a bit of news about a game will drop.
There's no patience, is there? You would wait, what was it, monthly for a lot of the games magazines we grew up with. And then when it came, it was like an event. You read through it, reread it, look at all the photos, because that's all you had, a screenshot of a game. Now you can just go watch a preview video.
That's why it was so revered. That's why people love those magazines and love those writers, because you earned that information. You waited, and the build up and the excitement, and it was. Whereas now it's you don't have to earn it. It's also readily available. That it generally just means very little.
It's the magazines that survive. I feel sorry for, because by the time they've gone to print, it's the totally inverse situation of the world that you lived in. Everything that's in their magazine has already been read twice on the internet. Whereas in your era, the first time people saw some of the shocking news, exciting news, was when they rolled back that first glossy slip cover of the magazine and went into the pages and were like, oh my God.
It's a whole different world. They have to think completely different. I mean, with us, the big thing with what we were doing really was being first. The fight was always to be first, always to get to something before your rivals, always to get the exclusive on this or the exclusive on that. Whereas now with magazines, they know they're not going to get it, unless you're someone like The Edge or something, whereby you're very, very good and very, very in with the development side of it. So you could produce something far more in depth or technical than a website can produce. Apart from that, the straightforward review-based magazines are always going to come up light against the internet, because internet is just, it's instant, isn't it? It's a push of a button and it's all over the world.
Yeah. For everything that's good about the internet, there's an awful lot of bad as well. One more question around the magazine era, if we may. It's the .gaming.gram. Is it okay to be a little greedy and ask 2 questions? Smiling with sweat emoji. I'd imagine, seeing as you're at this point, the Gaming Gram, the answer is yes. The first one I'd like to ask is if Dave had any involvement with the Gamesmaster magazine and what his thoughts on it were. He says, this is where you get to rain down and say it was absolute nonsense, because he says it's personally my favourite gaming mag of all time. So just wet your whistle with destroying Gamesmaster magazine. Secondly or thirdly, I guess that the last one was kind of 2 questions. Does Dave think gaming publications have adapted well to the digital age? We've kind of done that. So I think the first question really is the one, is were you involved with Gamesmaster magazine, and what did you think to it?
No, Gamesmaster magazine, was a bit sad for me, really, because when Gamesmaster magazine came out, we were so excited because obviously, you know, we'd done the show, we'd made the show, and then we sold the official license for the magazine to Future. I say we didn't, Hewland did. Sold the official magazine. I always say we with Gamesmaster because that's how I feel about that show. And it got sold to Hewland.
A good thought process to have.
Yeah, it got sold to Future, and they brought it out. And it was one, I think at the time, it was probably the biggest launch the industry had ever seen. I mean, it absolutely, I think it's something like a couple of 100,000 copies or something in its first issue. And no one had ever seen a launch that big before. That was the power of the show. And unfortunately, though, rightly, from their point of view, but Future had decided, I think, not to involve the TV show too much. They wanted it to be its own entity, the magazine. They used the look of the TV show a lot in the magazine, but they didn't really involve the personalities that were on the show that much, apart from, I think, Dominic. I'm not sure if Patrick ever appeared in there. They used his face, obviously.
They used his face, yeah.
I think Dominic was probably interviewed in there a few times. But they decided to move away slightly from the TV show and make the Games magazine very much their own entity, which, you know, made complete sense. It gave them more control. And they paid for the license, so it was up to them to do what they wanted with it. And personally, I think it was a tremendous magazine. I think they did a really, really good job with it. I always enjoyed it. We were always envious of it. And it was the reason we went up to Hewland about a year later and bought the rights to Games World magazine and brought that out as a multi-format, because Paragon at the time didn't have a multi-format title. And we saw how well Gamesmaster did as a launch. And so we went off and signed Games World and tried to do something similar. We knew it wouldn't be as big because Sky wasn't as big as being on terrestrial TV. Yeah. But yeah, that was our reply to Gamesmaster, if you like, was bringing out Games World.
Well, now you mentioned Games World, if we could just touch on that for a little while. Obviously, that was your other show that you were involved in, and equally as successful, in my opinion. Obviously, as you cited earlier, there was a quality tail off. The show kind of evolved and changed from its first concept into what you kind of became dissatisfied with, I think is a fair way of putting it. How did that begin and end, that relationship there?
Games World.
Yeah.
Games World was an interesting one because Games World, initially they approached me to go and work on the show. They wanted me to do a show, I think it was called The Disc Doctors or something initially, was an idea, because Games World was the first time a TV show had been put over 5 nights a week, you know, outside of being a soap opera. And so we had to fill it. They had to fill it with different shows to give each one an identity to stop them getting boring. So they talked to me about doing a show called Disc Doctors, and they wanted me to go on the show with 2 other games experts, and basically people would have their game problems and we'd go through their game problems with them. I didn't want to do that at all because I wanted my own show. I wanted to be the only person on the show. I wanted to be a presenter in my own right. So I turned them down. I said I didn't want to do that. So they invited me then back to go, and they decided they were going to have a live games challenge with the games experts from all the big magazines in the country. It was the only time that's ever been done on television. And so I went up. I agreed to do that because I thought, right, I don't want to let this go completely, but it has to be on my terms. So I went up and I took on, I think Mean Machines were there and a few other magazines. And I got through to the final. I beat Jim Douglas, the editor of Gamesmaster magazine, in the final. Get in there. And, I couldn't beat him in the circulation wars, but I could beat him on the King of Monsters.
That'll do.
So I won that. And then for season 2, they asked me again if I would go and go up there and work on the show. And this time they gave me my own presenter role on one of the Eliminators, because the Eliminator was now going on 2 nights a week. So they gave me my own presenter's contract, which I still have to this day because I was very proud of that. And so that's how my relationship with Games World started. And Games World was a good gig because Games World was 26 shows a year. Whereas Gamesmaster, sometimes, I think Gamesmaster, the first one was like 10 shows or something, and the next one was 14 shows or something. So this was a lot more shows. So for me, from a personal point of view, when you add up my Games World shows and my Gamesmaster shows, I've actually appeared on more video game TV shows than anyone else in gaming history. So that's my little, my little boast.
Surely Norris McWhirter needs a phone call about this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Record breakers. Games. Then I went back for a series. Obviously, after the series 3, there was a big lull.
Yeah.
During which time I'd fallen out with Gamesmaster, fatally. And they asked me back to do Games World 4. I agreed to go back to Games World 4 because Games World, like Gamesmaster, I was emotionally attached to it. And I went back to do the show, but this time it was only 15 minutes show, and they changed the format completely. It was behind the scenes. It was pretty much the same people that had been involved in the later Gamesmaster shows, which obviously wasn't good for me. And I felt the show's quality wasn't very good anymore. Games World had always been very cyberpunky and dark and quirky, and now all of a sudden it was set in some Inca temple with where a dog came on with the challenge in his mouth and a bone, and and it was just a little bit twee for me. And although I got a lot of airtime, I just wasn't feeling it. It just felt like a shadow of the show it used to be, especially when they got some of the videators on as different characters. That kind of killed the videators, because it's kind of like, hang on, that's so-and-so, and now he's being so-and-so. I just found it all, I was struggling with it. And like I say, my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, she was having my daughter, and there was too many distractions, and I just felt done. I was getting, the games industry is hard, and I always faced a lot of animosity in the games industry because of being so high profile and doing the bragging character, the games animal all the time and everything. I always got a lot of animosity for that. And I just felt that maybe the games industry had enough of me. Maybe I'd had enough of the games industry, and I just stepped back.
Do you think, in a way, sort of living up to the games animal, pro gamer sort of, because we've spoken to you now for quite some time, and you seem just like a straight up genuine dude. Do you think playing into that character of like the wolf of Games World or Gamesmaster actually made, especially in the world of TV at the time, where we didn't get as much behind the scenes, or we wouldn't have access to your Instagram page, so we wouldn't know? People were very quick to just draw the assumption that you were like this dude, this bad dude, this pro gamer dude, and that was it, really. That was their decision made.
To be fair, I cultivated that, and I enjoyed playing that. I enjoyed doing it. I loved seeing people get wound up by it. I loved reading the vitriol over it. I was very much enjoying pushing people's buttons and pulling people's strings. It was I absolutely. Oh yeah, Harry Maguire's just scored for England. Oh yeah, I absolutely loved playing up to that character. So I did it to myself, and to a degree, probably in those days, I was like that. In those days, I was cocky, I was young, I was very, very good, and I was desperate to make a name for myself and to be larger than life, because there wasn't anyone like that in the games industry. And the problem the games industry always had was that you had. In the film industry, in the music industry, if there was a story or somebody wanted a reaction to something, they could phone up an actor, they could phone up a producer, they could phone up a guitar player, a singer, a manager, whatever, and they could get a story out of it. They could. So the film industry and the music industry in mainstream media got lots of attention because it was easy to formulate a story around it.
Yes.
The games industry, when something big happened in it, there was no story, because mainstream media, TV, newspapers, etc., couldn't latch onto it. They couldn't interview Sonic. They couldn't interview Mario. They couldn't interview Lara. There was no one to interview. There was no go-to people in the games industry. So the games industry stayed underground, while the film industry and the music industry was much easier for the papers and mainstream media to make stories out of. So what I tried to do was be a larger-than-life character, a very noticeable character, who could be a go-to guy for those stories and things like that. But of course, when you do that, you entice a lot of jealousy. You a lot of people see you as getting above your stations. It's a barrel of crabs mentality. Everyone's fighting to get out of the barrel, but as soon as somebody gets near the top, someone else grabs their leg. So it's like that. And I appreciate that I brought a lot of it on myself, but it worked at the time. it worked at the time, and things change. And now, hopefully, I'm older, I'm more mellow, and I'm doing podcasts like this, talking to people like yourselves and that, and people can see, that behind the character. Times change. You soften as the years go by.
Yeah, I think I like to imagine it's a combination of both. I see that you were cultivating it, but maybe when I was younger, you kind of look up to a cool bandana wearing leather jacket dude, and you take it probably more at face value. Now I'm older and I look back, and not everyone gets the luxury of having their youth stored on YouTube, Dave, like you have. I can see it with older eyes, and I can kind of see through it a little bit more. So again, there's a multiple level performance that you've put on there without really knowing so.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely playing up to that guy. I wanted to be that guy. I wanted to be a rock star, but I wasn't good enough at playing guitar, and I wasn't a very good singer, And I'd like to. I'd like to have played number 9 for Manchester United, but I'm 5'7", so it wasn't going to happen. So it was this was my opportunity to grab a little bit of the spotlight, So I was going for it by being something larger than life and doing something that people would remember, and I think also the fact that I was incredibly good looking didn't help, because it made people jealous.
Modest, son of a gun as well.
I think if I'd have been an uglier guy, people would have let me get away with it.
I think you're probably right, to be fair. That I think has drawn a really neat line under the games TV world, and really that really draws a line under your gaming career to that point. Got a couple of things I'd like to just ask you, really, out of curiosity. You're now doing tattoos. Was that another, going back all the way back to your degree in art and the fact that you were good at art, again, thoroughly modest as always, but you did get a master's in it. Has that been involved in the tattoo scenario?
I didn't get a master's in it. So my wife's just thrown me a look across the room when you said that, like, masters? No, I didn't get a master's in art.
What did you get? You said at the start you went off
honours.
Honours. Forgive me, I don't know anything. My GCSEs spell out the word fudge, Dave. So it means nothing to me. But you've went off with your artist skills.
Yeah.
Is that something that fed into that, or was something? Did you have tattoos at the
definitely.
time? How did that work?
Well, what happened was, like I say, in '98 I left the TV work behind. In '99 I left the magazine work behind, and went into the movie magazine industry because I love film, and I got out of the games thing completely. I went back and did QVC for a year to pay for my wedding, because I didn't realize. I proposed to my wife before I realized how expensive a wedding was going to be, so I had to retro engineer that one a little bit, and then around about 2007 I just could see how the internet was killing print. I could see how it was getting harder and harder to get magazines out there, to shift units. I mean, the news agencies, like WH Smiths and people like that, they were charging more and more money to put magazines on shelves. People think you produce a magazine, it goes on a shelf. It doesn't. You have to spend promotional money with news outlets and that for them to put your magazines on the shelf. So it's all extra money. It's all about how much you're prepared to spend and that. And it's becoming harder and harder because you were selling less units but having to spend more money. And a lot of the advertising was going over to the internet and things like that. So your lines of revenue were getting cut. And so I could see that print was gradually being killed by the internet. And I wanted to stay in the Southwest. This is where I wanted to raise my daughter. So I had to do something that would allow me to stay down here. And I had done a bit of tattooing in the past, and my art skills were there. And so it was something I went back to. I began relearning to tattoo. And then when I felt ready, I sold the business, sold the magazines, stayed working there for 6 months or so for the transition to go over, while tattooing as well on the side. And then eventually just moved across and opened my own shop. And that's what I do now. It was just a need to go and do something different and to support my family, really. You get to a certain age and a certain stage and you realize you're not going to go any further with that. So you just have to, sometimes you have to reset. And
I have to admire you. You know, at the top of the interview, you said how you had to just you keep pushing on these doors. There's no such thing as a closed door. There's just another way of getting in. I think you said, or words to that effect. And you've kind of applied that methodology to your whole raison d'etre of your life. You know, most people would look at that and be like, well, I can draw, but I don't really want to permanently mark someone's skin because it might not be that good. But you went off, you had the self-belief, you did a little bit of practice, you monetized your investments to that point, and then you branched over to something that, like, I know people that play video games have tattoos.
You got to believe, you got to have respect for what you're going to do. Whatever you're going to get into, if it's magazines, if it's tattooing, whatever, you have respect for the art form. Learn what you need to learn, and then and just believe in yourself and have confidence, and that's just what I did. And you know, and then a few years ago, Craig came to me, Craig Turner, who runs the Retro Revival events.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been asked over and over to go and do retro gaming things and get back into the games industry. I didn't want to. And he knew I'd always wanted a Mortal Kombat 2 cabinet. And so he offered to get me a Mortal Kombat 2 cabinet if I did Retro Revival 2017. So that was how I stepped back into the industry again. That's how I ended up here all over again.
Is that
sort of
what? Is that?
Was my love for it?
Was that the jumping off point to Games Animal?
Yes. Yeah, that was. I went back to Retro Revival. I went to Retro Revival because I hadn't done anything with the games industry since 99. And I hadn't wanted to. I felt that the industry had enough of me. After the whole Gamesmaster thing and that, I felt a lot of vitriol and animosity towards me. So I thought, well, I've had my run. Mm-hmm. You know, fair enough, I'll do something else. And then Craig convinced me that the retro industry, the retro gaming market didn't feel that way. You know, they kind of saw people like myself from the old days as kind of heroes and legends, and they enjoyed meeting us now. So he convinced me to go back and do it. That and him offering me a Mortal Kombat 2 cabinet. And I went up there and I agreed to be a keynote speaker. At his retro exhibitions, he has a hall whereby people speak to the crowd. Audience comes in and they ask questions, and you have programmers there and old journalists and things like that. So I did one of those. And it was very well received. And I went out into the main hall afterwards and had a beer and curry. And people kept coming up and asking if they could have their photos taken with me and everything. And at this point, I wasn't wearing the bandana. I'd taken the bandana with me just in case, but I wasn't wearing a bandana. And I was getting such a warm reaction that they were doing some game challenges up on the stage, Street Fighter. So I went up on the stage and I put my bandana on. And I walked out onto the stage with the two guys presenting challenges and started presenting the games, like Gamesmaster style, doing the Street Fighter challenge with the bandana on. And we pulled a lovely big crowd, you know, and everybody seemed to be really digging it. The guy from Gamesmaster suddenly just appeared on stage. And the thing was, a lot of them didn't even realize I was there. It was just when I put the bandana on, suddenly it was the guy from Gamesmaster. You know,
that to me, that's possibly, that is one of the most beautiful stories I've heard retold. That was magic. I bet those people in that hall thought some sort of weird magic was happening, because that sounds beautiful.
It was wonderful. I felt a real warmth from them in doing it. And then afterwards, what happened as well was I popped down after. I kept the bandana on then and walked around and posed for pictures with people and everything. And it was lovely. And I walked down back into the talk area, and Mr. Biffo was doing a talk down there. Paul Rose, you know, used to do Digitizer back in the day. And he came over and some people asked if I would pose with him for some photos. So I did. And then afterwards, now Paul is quite cynical. He's a very clever writer, very, very creative guy, but he can be quite cynical. And he wrote this lovely article afterwards about meeting me, about how he never really saw my value back in the day. But at that show, when I put the bandana on, he suddenly realized how important that bandana had been to his memory of 90s gaming and all that, you know. And it was just lovely. I had a real nice moment with that. And that was when Craig then afterwards persuaded me that I should do something with YouTube, you know, and do Games Animal TV. Initially, we thought we would try and do a proper old 90s style challenge-based TV show thing, but it never really came off. A few people that were going to be involved didn't quite get involved in the end. So I told people I was going to do it. So then I decided I would just make it a retro show where I would just go through, dig out some old things from the past and just talk about old memories and things like that. I just make it for retro people. And the funny thing is people initially weren't sure of it. You know, they were like, oh, you know, it's Dave Perry trying to make himself relevant, trying to do YouTube shows. He doesn't get the algorithms of YouTube and all this. I'm like, no. Do you understand? I'm not trying to be relevant. I'm not relevant anymore. And I'm not trying to get 10 million viewers and make money out of it. I'm not charging anything for this. There's no advertising on it. Right, yeah. I'm doing this just when I feel like it. And if you want to watch it, you could watch it. But it's as simple as that. And the funniest thing for me was in the first two shows, I did them 480 DPI. I did them 480 resolution. Because I'd found an old camera from the 90s, Sony Handycam, and I thought I'll use that. That's authentic. People lost their mind over it. Oh my God, he doesn't know what he's doing, you know, because why isn't this in HD? Why isn't this in 4K? You know, why is this 480? You know, I'm like, it's a retro gaming show. You're supposed to be retro gaming fans. What don't you get about retro?
I think that's such an interesting USP to actually film it on a 90s Handycam.
Authentic.
Yeah, real.
It made sense.
Magical.
But I loved it. I did two shows like it, and then I changed and I started filming it on my iPad instead, so it was in better resolution. Just because people couldn't get their heads around it. And once again, going back to what we were saying about the game's animal character, I was enjoying winding them up. They were getting so butthurt about the fact that I was having the audacity to put a show out in such bad quality. It's like, it's free, for fuck's sake. I'll put out whatever I want. And people couldn't get over somebody having that attitude. It's like, I wasn't trying to win awards, you know. How dare you do this? This is YouTube.
Well, the high watermark of quality that is YouTube. Before we talk,
I got to go in a minute, mate. I'm getting a nod.
Okay. Well, before we do, let me just ask you this last question, because you've got a book.
Make it a good one. Yeah, the book. Yes. Now, I've been helping. Back in the day, everything's back in the day with me, isn't it? But back in the day, there was a video games website called Gamesmaster TV Live. And it was run by a guy called Jack Templeton. And Jack was a real fanboy for Gamesmaster, was a real fan. And I used to talk to him a lot about the show, and I'd go onto his forums and talk to people and that, and I would send him things, pictures and that occasionally. And I would help him out with his website where I could. And then I lost track of him, hadn't talked for ages. And he got back in touch with me a couple of months ago, and he was doing a Kickstarter. He decided he was going to do a whole book about the history of Gamesmaster TV show. And could I help him? So I've sent him up lots of pictures from my personal archives and things like that. I've done a few interviews with him over Zoom and things like that he's put into the TV show and into the book. Sorry. He's spoken to nearly everybody involved with the show, producers, Jane Hewland that owned Hewland International, Dominic, commentators, people that appeared on the show. I think Robbie Williams has written the foreword for the book because he was one of our contestants, things like that. He's done a really thorough job on it, and it's the history of Gamesmaster. It went live on Kickstarter. It was aiming for a total of £45,000, and it got there within a day. 24 hours, it was completely funded. And there's a few like side tiers as well. And one of the side tiers is called the Peacemaker, and it's £5,000. And the person that takes it up gets to join Dominic Diamond coming down to my tattoo studio to get a tattoo. And we'll meet for the first time in 25 years. And that person will try and broach the peace between myself and Dominic over what happened in that TV show.
Mumsy, fetch my piggy bank.
That's a little bit of video game history that's going to happen there and then. But the book should be coming out in November, I think. So it looks like a really nice book. They've done a really good job with it. So I'm hoping it's going to be a good read. But obviously,
just enough time for me to crowdfund my £5,000 I need for that side tier. That sounds like magic.
Crowdfunder, yeah, definitely. I like it. Okay, dude, I got to go.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave.
It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you again. We'll contact you tomorrow just to thank you again in person. But Yeah, been an absolutely wonderful interview. Hopefully, you enjoyed it as much as we did. And
I did. I particularly liked the bit where Harry Maguire scored.
Oh, that's not really a high level of quality for the show, is it? There you go. That's always got to be a win. Dave, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and thank you for the honour of your company. It's been
You're welcome, buddy. Thank you for inviting me on the show.
My pleasure. You take care. Thank
Cheers.
you.
See you later, guys.
See you, Dave.
I hope
Bye.
you get out of prison soon.
Thank you.
Okay. That was Dave Perry.
Jesus.
Tom. No, Tom? Oh. So Tom's left as well. Hang on a minute. Let me check my phone. Oh, I've got a message. George, Tom, Dave taking me trestles for food. Got bored of listening to you anyway. We're off like real celebrities to go for a meal. Okay, well, that seemingly, though, leaves me a little bit trapped between the devil and the deep blue sea, because with those two gone, I know what I'll do. Obviously, you know, we have James the Work Experience Boy, Nancy the Intern here with us in America, in New York, doing a shift, learning how to become podcasters in their own right. So let me... Nancy! Nancy!
Hello.
Nancy, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
What's it like? This is the first time on air. What do you think the UC Army is going to think about Nancy the Intern getting a real-life stint on air?
Well, I'm very excited, so hopefully they like it.
I am sure they will, Nancy. Thing is, it'll be interesting to see what you see, because guess what? Can you hear that noise, Nancy? Do you hear that noise?
Yes, I do. I hear it very loud and clear.
That is the sound of a Nissan Bluebird tearing down Fifth and Main. It's time for a peek in what we affectionately call Stingrays boot, what's nestled between some counterfeit nappies and a dodgy copy of Battlefriend this week. These are the new release highlights for the week March 29th and April 4th, 2021. Listeners, these are out digital or physical, or will be by the time this podcast is in your feed, but could be region dependent. Nancy, first time you've met the Ray.
Yes.
Tell me how you see the Ray.
He seems like a cool guy, but he might be on the run from the police.
You think he could be a dodgy looking character?
Yeah, he doesn't look very normal.
Okay, well that's how I see him. We have a very similar sight of the Ray. Okay, have you picked a mummy game out of the boot?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, I'll go first.
Yes, please do.
And this, actually,
yes,
is my mummy. It's Doom 3 VR edition for the PSVR, March 29th. Doom 3 VR edition includes over 15 hours of gritty sci-fi action horror gameplay and includes both terrifying campaign expansions, Resurrection of Evil and The Lost Mission. The expansions dive deeper into the demonic invasion, ratcheting up the horror and action with new powerful weapons and dangerous enemies.
That sounds great. Very exciting.
Very exciting. What next game? Is this your mummy Disco Elysium or not?
Maybe. I'm not sure. I don't really know about it.
Okay. Well, why don't you read it out, Nancy?
Okay.
Tell you what, Nancy. Some specs.
Yeah, maybe. Disco Elysium, if I said that right. The final cut. PC, PS5, PS4, Stadia, and it'll be out on March the 30th. Disco Elysium, the final cut, is a groundbreaking playing game. You're a detective with a unique skill at your disposal, a whole city to cave your path across, integrate unforgettable characters, crack murders, or take bribes, become a hero or an absolute disaster of a human being. I don't want to be an absolute disaster of a human being, so I think I like the sound of this game.
Oh, okay. Well, I was thinking that sounds like my life. I'm a disaster. I'm an absolute disaster of a human being.
I don't think so.
Well, Nancy, you're very kind to me. It's only because I pay you wages.
I don't want to get fired.
It's the power I wield. Now I know what it feels like to be Dave Perry. Right. Evil Genius 2 World Domination on the PC, March 30th. Do you think of them down there at Trestles drinking cocktails together, Dave and Tom, quaffing like celebrities?
And I'm have to slave away with you.
It's not good, is it?
No.
Still, he'll be back in jail tomorrow, so it's fine.
Yes.
Evil Genius 2 World Domination PC. I actually thought this would be your mummy, March 30th. A satirical spy-fi lair builder where you are the criminal mastermind. Construct your base, train your minions, defend your operations from the forces of justice, and achieve global, I'm not even joking, global domination.
I mean, that does sound good. I think that might be my mummy.
There you go. What's next out the boot?
It's I Saw Black Clouds for PC, PS4, Xbox, yeah, Xbox One, and Switch on.
You write this, Nancy.
Yeah, I forgot. No, I paid James to do my part of the work.
I like it.
Yes.
Delegation.
On March 30th, and it's after the unexpected death of a close friend, Christina returns to her hometown looking for answers, only to unearth a string of dark secrets. I Saw Black Clouds is an interactive psychological thriller with the supernatural elements and branching storylines.
I think today you're going to get like a tick in your little work experience book. I think you're doing your internship book. That's fantastic. A Narita Boy, PC, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch, March 30th. Become a symphonic in Narita Boy, a radical action game. Action adventure as a legendary pixel hero trapped as a mere echo within the digital kingdom. Discover the mysteries behind the techno sword. Lock swords with the corrupt and tainted stallions.
Ooh.
Save the world.
I like saving the world.
What's next out the boot?
Shelter 3 on PC. What happens when a leader falters? I can't read that. What does that say?
You're doing better than Bobby and Tom. The matriarch
needs your help to get to an important destination, and you must keep everyone safe along the way. Decode which paths take as you lead through the matriarch's forgotten places, but choose carefully. Each path has its own shadows. I did mess up about a bit on that one. Hopefully, you can all understand.
It's fine. Fine, we'll leave it in. It's
a learning experience.
It is a learning.
Yes.
That's why you're the intern. You know all the work. Right. Next up, Drive By PC, Switch, March 31st. Take the battle to the streets in this car combat game with a delivery twist. Outdrive, outsmart, and outdeliver your rivals.
Oh, sounds great. And then we have Outriders for PC, PS5, Xbox Series X, PS4, Xbox One, and Stadia. On April the 1st, Outriders' brutal and bloody combat combines violent powers and deep RPG systems to create a true game hybrid. Wow.
Resident Evil 7 finally limps onto Stadia as it dies. So it's only right and proper it gets an old game on its corpse system. April 1st, maybe it's a joke, maybe it's not. Fear and isolation seep through the walls of an abandoned southern farmhouse. 7 marks a new beginning for survival horror with the isolated view with the visceral new first-person perspective. Now, he's looking at me a little bit sort of crazily, old Ray. I'm not quite sure what to make of him. He's sparked up another Lambert and he's asking us to pick a VHS from the back of his boot.
Oh, no.
I don't know. I don't even know what I'm going to have. Wait, hold.
Oh.
I'm going to take Cars, Disney Pixar movie, because why not?
The one for Lightning McQueen, or whatever his name is.
Yeah, that's him.
That's an excellent film.
Oscar worthy.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Let's have a look.
What are you going to pick?
I'm going to pick... Oh, no, sorry. I'm going to pick The Lion King from Disney because I want a Disney film as well, and that's my favourite one.
Okay, all right. You didn't know what to pick, and then suddenly you got the inspiration out the back of the boot.
Yes, I did. That's what the boot is about.
Thing is, Blink, he's gone.
Oh, no.
I don't know where he's gone. I don't know whether he was real. I've no idea at this point. But to be honest with you, you saw him.
Yeah.
Dave didn't see him.
Oh.
He had to go. Him and Tom had cocktails to burn.
I think if we both saw him, then he's probably real.
Well, the Enigmatic Boys saw him as well, but he's not real. Mike Rouse saw him. Sir Mike Rouse.
What an absolute icon.
He is an icon.
Yes.
We actually knighted Dave, and then he left early.
Oh, no.
So I might revoke his night shift.
That might be for best. Or not, because he did pretty well when he was here.
He did, didn't he?
Yes.
He said your cup of tea and coffee making skills were next level.
They really are. I've been practicing.
Okay. Well, those have paid attention at the top of the show, and it really does feel like a distant memory at this point. They know that the show can't end until I ask whoever's here at this point, which is me and Nancy, what we're hoping to play. Nancy, what are you hoping to play this gaming week?
Probably more Minecraft.
Well, you like a bit of the Minecraft, do you?
Yep, I've been playing it a lot, and you can never run out of things to do on Minecraft.
Have you built? I heard that you've been following my internet tutorial and you've built a skull base.
Yeah, my skull base is a bit long though.
What?
Yours is a bit more like better shaped. Mine looks a bit more like an elongated dog skull.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to seeing that. Okay, well, I'm going to play probably a bit more PSP. I really feel like I need to do something on the PS5, although I'm not sure which. Because we've got to record this show early, it means I get a full weekend off, which is a very rare treat.
Yes, lots of prospects for games.
Lots of prospects for games. Are you going to try and take in some sights of New York, COVID permitting?
Yes, I am.
You going to go Central Park? That's open.
Yes, I will go there.
Okay. I look forward to it. Well, one would imagine, really, that what a tumultuous show that's been. But it's been, I feel, like a good episode, Nancy. What do you reckon? From behind the glass in the mixing room, how did it sound?
I think it's been great, and I'm very honoured to be here.
Well, you've got the job. You can stop. You can stop now. You're all good. If you see something that's wrong,
yes, I will.
Need to bin this whole show and use your university skills to take it to the next level. I'll read all Dave's lines. I'll pretend to be you. Okay. Does that need to happen?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Well, that's all we have time for this week, listeners. As always, thank you for your time. I look forward to the pleasure of speaking to you again next week. Until then, happy gaming. And remember, there's nothing wrong with being given the unofficial controller. It's what you do with it that counts. See you, Nancy.
Bye, George.
Hi, it's George here from the Unofficial Controller podcast. Just taking a moment to, first of all, thank you for listening. It means a hell of a lot to us. Secondly, every week we bring you free content, the latest news, the new releases, a feature of note, normally something to do with games or gaming past, be it one of our history of documentaries or an insight into the industry itself, or how games have affected us as people. Well, yes, we incorporate you, listeners, into that. All we ask is that you drop a little comment on our post on social media and you can get featured on the show. Hey, do you know what? You may even win a prize. The only charge for this is £0, 0 pence, $0. That's right, no money. But all we ask is that you like, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you found this show. And if you're feeling a little bit cheeky, tell a friend, get them to do the same. We have a Discord that's free for you guys to all join in and get involved in. And the community on Instagram and Twitter is alive and thriving. So don't be a lonely gamer. Make yourself known. Thank you. And now it's time to begin this week's entertainment. Take care, guys.